Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to round number 8 of the Tata Steel Masters. My name is Gustafsson. I'm joined by the only candidate with a higher approval rate than Donald Trump, Super Grandmaster Peter Svidler.
Oh dear.
I worked on that one very hard. What we got today?
Round 8 of the Tata Steel Viking Day 2016. Lots of interesting games as usual, and you see the pairings on your screen right now, hopefully. The top game, I guess, if you have to pick, is the game between Karekin and Carlsen. Although Sergei is only on 50%, but he is in the candidates tournament, and it will be interesting to see how he does against Magnus, who is playing his second black in a row, which was something I missed yesterday when we were preparing for tomorrow's round. So Sergei should try and beat Magnus today if he wants to do well in this tournament. I think it's very critical to. It's a game where points can't double, so to speak, in terms of the tournament situation. But lots of other interesting stuff as well.
He hasn't beaten Magnus all that often. I looked it up. He's been holding his own. Magnus beat him 3 times, but Sergei only won 1 game with lots of draws, as we can see by their head-to-head score, 10-8 in Magnus Carlsen's favor. In the opening, e4, e5, not the biggest of surprises. That's what Magnus does.
Yeah, not so far.
What else are you interested in today? Like, I'm curious about the battle between Ding Liren and Wei Yi, 2 Chinese.
Yeah, and I'm also
Rising stars.
very happy about the opening, because this is something I've looked at. I mean, this particular variation is not really my specialty. I've never played it seriously with black. I dabbled at best. But 96 is a very modern try, and most likely it will be followed by bishop e2, e5, as we see bishop e2 on the screen. You know, the old 96 bishop g4, it hasn't been refuted as such, but it's not very popular these days. But this very concrete approach of playing e5 here, followed by g5, knight g4, sacrificing 1 pawn, and in many lines actually sacrificing another one very soon, is a very interesting variation to look at, and they are very rapidly progressing down that path.
Yeah, this is on the board. There's been a bunch of games here I've never studied in detail, I have to admit, but all sorts of high-profile games, Aroni and Giri, and so on and so forth. Sharp theory battle between Ding Liren and Wei Yi.
Yeah, in my limited attempts to analyze this position, I came to the conclusion that it probably holds for black, but there is no forced draw, and you will probably have to defend some endgame a pawn down, a long way down the road. So sadly, even this, very exciting in nature variation has been analyzed up to by now to be close to a draw with some pressure for white, unless you're willing to take much more risks than people normally take here. But
such is life if you play principled openings with the black pieces. But Wei Yi is gonna be happy. He's gotten his preparation for once. We've seen him take his timeouts very early in many of the 7 draws he's had. Against Ding Liren, they've played a bit, not as much as you would think, but 10 games total between them. Ding Liren is up a bit. Then again, Ding Liren is a couple of years older, so I'm assuming
they
some
played.
of these games
They played in the Baku World Cup in September. Wei Yi won in a very exciting tiebreak to get to play me. I remember I was watching with great interest there, because one of them was going to be my next round opponent, and it was an exciting tiebreak to watch live.
Yeah, Wei Yi in that match, and also to some extent in the match against you, he showed his resilience. He got in trouble strategically a lot, being outplayed by Ding Liren and by you later, but he hung around and won that match. And
sure.
Well, very close to winning against you.
Yeah, against me he defended some very, very unpleasant positions, and he eventually lost the one in which he was better, actually. He had 3 pretty miserable positions, all of which were drawn. And then he finally got a large advantage out of the opening, and that one I managed to win somehow.
They're blitzing out moves here. Queen takes d4, c6, queen c4, b5.
Yeah, b5 this is the main move. Although recently there have been attempts to revive the cd5, ed5, rook e8 plan. I think there was a game between Yakovenko and Navarra in the Euro clubs, I think, which ended in a draw, I suspect.
But we're pawn down.
Yes, but there is some activity. You play bishop f5, rook c8, knight e4. You try to sort of equalize more or less. I mean, I'm not sure if rook e8 is the best way to do it. Maybe you start with knight bishop f5 and rook c8, but no matter, because we're headed down a completely different path right now. b5 on move 12, queen c6, bishop d7, queen d6 is the main move here. And this is where black will start having options. I think you generally play rook e8 here. And after bishop g5, which is what they normally do, the position becomes simpler to a degree, because black plays b4 here. Queen takes b4 is more or less forced. Black plays knight takes d5. Knight takes d5, queen takes g5. White castles. Black in some order plays bishop h3 and rook a b8. I'm not sure which order is the more precise.
This is all the game, for example.
Yeah.
Aronian against Giri, so nothing new under the sun, where we'll see if Wei Yi can just make a draw effortlessly, or
yeah,
if
but
he has to
also after rook e8, I think they sometimes try playing f3. And then play becomes a huge mess, because black starts playing on both flanks. There's all kinds of ideas connected with knight h5, bishop b5. You can also go before bishop f8, b4 in almost every single position. So, yeah, it's a very, very sharp position. White is, two healthy central pawns up. But black, for now, has a lot of activity connected to the fact that the queen on d6 is constantly getting in the way. And, black can gain a lot of time attacking it. So, a very exciting opening, but it would have been more exciting if not for the fact that this is mainline theory by now. And people know a lot about it, and it's quite possible that they will blitz out the next 10 moves, and there will be some ending with white having the extra e4 pawn and trying to prove that it's enough for a win.
We'll keep you posted. For now, let's have a look at what else we got going on.
Let's go to Magnus is doing something curious. G6 is not a novelty, obviously, but yeah, it's...
He's played this in the past. It's not supposed to be a clean equalizer, but some people have dabbled with it, Magnus and Nakamura included. He sometimes likes playing some goofy or half goofy sidelines in the Spanish. We remember He played knight d4, he's played some knight g7s. And g6, I believe, the old mainline theory is that after castles, bishop g7, c3, white is supposed to be a little better. And
it's not really very much. Yeah,
no,
e4, c4, d5. Yeah, there's also black could actually, I think, after c3 switch to some kind of Steinitz positions with d6, bishop d7, followed by knight g7, and that also is supposed to be playable, I think.
Yeah, Magnus has played setups like that as well.
So. Yeah, I think if you want to refute in air quotes there, but 4d4 I think has to be a critical try, followed by bishop g5, bishop e7. I think you take on e7, you take on c6, you take on d4 with the queen. But they sometimes take, I think, maybe knight g7 is a more modern approach there, trying to go for some immediate equality with the d5 break later on. I'm not altogether up to date here. I know the position after queen e7 takes on c6 and queen takes d4 is supposed to be slightly better for white, but...
Looks like it.
Yeah, the point being after knight f6 you play knight c3 and you want to play queen e5, and after bishop g4 I think you go knight d2. Then you drive this bishop away from g4, you play long castle, and you get a kind of a position you normally get in an exchange Spanish, where your structure is better. Also, the pieces remaining on the board favor white, because I think black would prefer a dark square bishop there to a light square bishop. So this was never considered to be completely equal. I'm curious if Sergei will go for this, or whether he will try something else.
We'll find out. I got jumped to a game between Navarra and Caruana. This is a line close to my heart, because this is a line I recommended in my video series on the Queen C2. Nimzo, I'll admit, and I admitted in the video series, that objectively black should be able to defend. But this move knight f3, which is rare, the main line is a3, even e4 is more popular than knight f3. But knight f3 leads to very direct play, and black has to, if he wants to equalize, more or less enter. That's not really true, d5 is a move here, but c5 is the most principled move, and here he has to enter a reasonably forcing line, knight to a6.
Even I know about this, which is saying something. I'm not a Nimza player at all.
You haven't watched my video series? That's heartbreaking. Knight a6, the point is that after white committed to knight f3, it's worth black's while to fight for the e4 square and try to get a knight here. Morozevich used to dabble with c6 here, but that's not very tempting. So all of this is normal here. Black can play b6, intending to go bishop b7, which comes close to equality, but white normally gets the two bishops and small edge. So the principal move, which Caruana of course plays, he's a very well-prepared dude, is knight ce4, castles, knight c3, all of this. If you're interested, study my Queen c2 Nimzo series. There is much more detail in this. Bottom line is, white has a worse structure, but he has this powerful bishop, a bit similar to what we saw, for example, in Anish Giri's game yesterday, and what we see in countless games.
Yeah.
And white has to open the position before black is ready to exploit these weaknesses. Therefore, you go e5, de, knight takes e5. All this has been analyzed in great detail by me and by many others. Queen c7, here queen e2. There's alternatives, bishop f4. You always gotta watch out for g5.
Knight h5 also, yeah, but maybe even g5 immediately.
Yeah, here g5 works, so you come to that. So it's queen e2 or rook e1. Queen e2, knight to d7. It's the main move. Bishop d6 is possible, but it's much more risky. Knight d7, bishop f4. All of this has been played here. Black faces a choice between the immediate bishop d6 or knight takes e5, bishop e5, and then bishop d6, which is what Caruana played. Now it's white's turn, and I've recommended rook e1 in my series. Takes followed by rook b1 is also an option. Bottom line is black has to make a couple of precise moves to neutralize white's pressure, and then he should have very good chances of making a draw. But it's sort of a free roll for white, where black has to know exactly what he's doing. After rook e1, for example, bishop e5, queen e5, the computer gives queen c4 with 0-0, but such positions can get very, very tricky. Even though you're pawn up, you're not very well developed, and white's pieces are well centralized, and there's many dangerous tries. Yeah, I think I recommended a4, but any rook to d1, intending rook d4, rook g4, bishop e4.
Yeah,
this
does look very messy, and the way Dingler game is making me extremely happy. I no longer know anything about the position, but they did not go for the boring pawn up kinds of positions.
We'll get there in one second. Let me just finish this. The more boring alternative is to just take on e5, rook takes e5, play rook d8, then rook b8, and try to defend this position. Many lines you lose the b7 pawn, but you have very good drawing chances. We'll see what Caruana comes up with, and back to our Chinese friends. What's up?
There's also seemingly have been complaints about the audio quality. We'll have a look at that whenever there's a free moment. But for now, let's stick to the openings. And in this game, we left it a few moves ago, and I mentioned that there is this crazy line where white plays f3, and black immediately challenges with the white center by playing knight h5, f5. And in the position you see on the screen right now, both players are playing at lightning speed, frankly. It seems like it's both Wei Yi's and Ding Liren's preparation up to now. And the position is very, very difficult to assess and extremely interesting. First thing that comes to mind, of course, is that black can play queen h4 check here, which probably will be replied to by g3. And if knight takes g3, white has bishop f2. On g3 and probably picking it up on the next move. There's also plenty of other opportunities here for black. Bishop f8 comes to mind, which probably wins the b2 pawn, but it might be a little bit too slow. And queen h4 has been played by Wei Yi, I guess with the idea of meeting g3 with... yeah, I'm not so sure. Let's try and analyze. I want to sacrifice a piece somewhere. I really think queen h3 long castle might not be very good. Bishop f2, let's say queen takes f4, bishop takes g3. Oh, h takes g3. H takes g3 worries me a little bit because I wanted to play queen e3. Yeah, this is a whole piece. I'm not sure I will make this work.
It's still a mess though, isn't it? Like queen somewhere, queen.
No, it's absolutely a mess because e3 is a huge threat. The king doesn't really have a safe haven neither on the king side nor on the queen side. So
where he is blitzing is obviously analyze this at home and
No, I
let's
think
see.
it's a very safe assumption that both of them are still very much in home prep. And yeah, I seem to be having a bit of a bad hair day. I apologize to those whose sensibilities it offends, but there's nothing to be
What are
done
you
about it.
talking about? People spend hours trying to cultivate an out of bed look.
Yeah,
People don't appreciate all the hard work that we put into our looks.
yeah.
Yeah, some discussions
True
about the
worse.
sounds. I changed the speaker now for those interested in technical stuff out there. We've had some problems with the live stream the last couple days. It kept crashing. So today we're trying to stream to YouTube, which in the past was not really an option because it was blocked for our German viewers. But it looks like they changed that for Germany. So we're experimenting a bit if streaming to YouTube live is actually gonna increase things, but there might be improve things, but there might be some teething problems. So yeah, I'm sure
Yeah,
we'll
please,
get the hang of it
please
eventually.
bear with us. We might have some small technical issues today. So after Queen H4, let's think for a little bit. First of all,
Ready?
yeah, I understand you didn't like to hear those words, but still, Bishop F2, Queen takes F4, and castles is probably a bit slow, because even just simply E3 followed by, no, E3 Bishop G3, I pick up some material.
Even that I'm not sure about, but
No, Bishop E5. Yeah, it
this
looks
move you have to go
G3
G3 and something.
and something, but actually it's not that easy to find a good square for the
Yeah,
queen.
because Queen G5, 94.
Yeah. It's a tremendously interesting position, and once again, we run the risk of getting completely stuck on this one game. So perhaps it's wise to at least mention other openings. Yeah,
Absolutely. Who you found against Luke Van Vele is a sharp knight of, as Luke likes to play. They've played quite a bit in the past. Well, not quite a bit. 4 games, 5 games. Luke is up by +1, 2.5, 1.5. I remember he won a nice game against her, I believe last year in the Tata Steel Masters with the white pieces. This time he's black and looks like he's
he's
going
sticking to
for
his
blood.
favorite Najdorf, and
Also, he's not affected by modern trends like knight g4
Yeah.
and get a solid position. He wants it the hard way.
but I'm kind of mildly disappointed he did not go e5 here, because I thought there would be 2 games where I could actually show off my 10-year-old theoretical knowledge.
With chaos.
Yeah, this line I played against the former outstanding woman player. That's not entirely fair, but I mean, you know what I mean. But I'm trying to avoid being slammed for sexist comments there. Judith played this against me, I think, more than once, beating me in great style. Although I don't think it's as good as her results against me in that line are. I lost a very painful game against her in this piece sacrifice variation, where I think by the time I committed a fatal blunder, I was like a rook and a piece up. And it seemed like I was finally getting things under control, and then I missed one small tactic, and everything collapsed, and I had to resign. And it's a great line to analyze, and a great line to comment on, because pieces are flying left and right. After h6, it gets slightly quieter, although
Can still get very messy,
Yeah.
right? Isn't it? A4 move here
E5,
when they
knight
still play
f5,
E5.
h5.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and this stuff.
yeah.
And yeah, I never understood it. I think they go GH, and my very limited knowledge says this is supposed to be okay for black. Actually,
This is GH. I think is a forced draw. This also brings very painful memories, because the first time I played for the first board for the Russian national team in an Olympiad was an Elista Olympiad in '98, and I started by making a bunch of draws, and then I was white against Topalov in a very important game, because in those years we had a lot of trouble playing the Bulgarians, and we kind of alternated losing to them and beating them 3.5-half. And it was suggested to me before the match that maybe I should make a draw with white against Veselin, because it would make the rest of the team feel slightly safer. But I thought, come on, this is my first time leading the team. I should be more ambitious. And I knew GH was a draw here, and I thought, no, this is not interesting. I should do something else, and I lost in 20 moves. So yeah, I remember that. people were looking at me quizzically after the match and trying to remind me that an idea of offering, well, not offering a draw, but making a draw somewhere was mentioned to me beforehand.
Sorry, man.
Yeah.
We'll see how this one goes. As usual, I'm rooting for Luki, but I always expect him to get checkmated in a sharp Najdorf. Let's see if he can manage to prove me wrong yet again. To conclude our tour, Wesley So keeps playing these very slow Truco pianos. We've seen him use it against Caruana, get an advantage there. I think it was the same line in very early A4. Seems to be what he's specializing in.
Yeah, that's the way he seems to be treating him. But I'm somewhat surprised by the knight A3, knight C2 maneuver. I don't think I've seen this much in top grandmaster practice. I think the knight generally gets developed to G2 and F1, but bringing it to E3 via different routes might make a lot of sense here. But it's at least a departure from the standard way of treating this opening from white. And we finally get a Berlin. I think it's the first one in 8 rounds, isn't it?
No, it's been 1 or 2 like D3 Berlins.
No, I mean
stuff,
Berlin, the proper Berlin,
game,
Queens off Berlin. I think it's the first one, and that has to be a very, very new thing in a tournament of this strength. The first Berlin appearing by round 8 is not something you see every day.
I've gotten some instructions regarding the sound only on one box or whatever it was. Let us know if it got better. Else, you have your right ear to listen to something else, which is also great news. And where's the Berlin?
In the Adam Selyanov game, yeah.
Nicky is another one of those guys who normally doesn't mind going for this endgame. He's won some nice games here against Levon Aronian.
Yeah, he
for example.
Levon doesn't lose too many games in this line in general, and he was soundly beaten, I thought, by Mickey in Reykjavik. So yeah, there have been some decisive games in the Berlin recently. So it's not all doom and gloom, but generally, you all know that it's a very solid opening. And
let's have a look at what happened. H3 is the move they nowadays prefer towards starting with knight c3 in 1 or 2 lines, knight bd2 after some g4 becomes an option. Bishop e7 is one of those lines actually.
Yeah, I'm slightly surprised.
King e8 and g4, knight to h4. That's the idea of bishop e7 to exchange his knight. And here, after takes, white has at least dabbled with knight d2 to put it either on f3 or e4, keeping some options open. But Mickey played knight c3.
I thought that was what he was supposed to do here, but Mickey has other ideas. h5 f3 is perfectly normal, but f7 f5 here is not something I've seen before.
No, this position is known instead of h5. They've also gone bishop e7 back. I believe Wang Yue was defending this sort of endgames for a long, long time. But f5 is, also according to my knowledge, a novelty. Let us know if you have more information on that. You can tweet us using the hashtag C24Live, or you can let us know in the Chess24 chat. So f5, I'm sure, fruit of Pavel Ilyanov's homework. So rule of thumb, you normally want to go e6 to keep things under control.
I don't think you can give black a chance to take on g4, and taking on h5 or f5 also looks wrong, because you create weaknesses in your own camp. Gf5 in particular brings the bishop c8, the c8 bishop to f5, where it suddenly starts lacking white's entire structure. So yeah, ef6 would be a safe bet, I think, here. And I have a suspicion he wants to go gf6, because bishop f6, knight e4 doesn't really look particularly inviting to my eyes.
No, this is one of these things in the
Although maybe you can just play bishop e6 and ignore it. Bishop e6 followed up by bishop d5 to force white to trade on f6, and you probably should hold this if white is forced.
Game, is that completely equal? I'm not sure.
Bishop d5.
King g2, let's say.
King f7, I guess. Just forget about the c7 pawn altogether. Go rook hd8, take on g4, go f5. Try and exchange everything on the king side. And even if you end up being 1 down, but everything comes out, I guess it's probably closer to a draw than it is to a white win. But yeah, it's not really particularly exciting for black. But they don't play the king e8 or bishop e7 variations of the Berlin for excitement, I think.
Well, ef6 is on the board. We'll see, because gf6 also looks like...
Yeah, and he has played gf6 instantly, so Now it becomes a question of stopping f5 or finding a decent reaction to f5, because it's quite clear that black is banking on f5 either immediately or after taking on g4, completely destroying the white structure on the king side, sort of obliterating the king side altogether, and solving his problems by force this way. So yeah, a curious position. As usual with the Berlin, I don't really know what to say. I have no idea how to assess any of this, so I can, you know, I can call out the moves as they're being made.
Sounds good to me. Bishop f4.
Yeah, bishop f4 is the most obvious and the immediate reaction. If you see this position for the first time, you probably play, in a blitz game, you play bishop f4 without
Yeah, I was wondering after f5, well, we might be able to take here, but also generally, is g5 possible? Like, it's very desirable, and not sure black is in time to go rook g8, even if we play
something like
king h1 or something.
It seems a bit slow, though. King h1, let's say I go bishop e6 now.
The point is now we can pin.
Yeah. Let's go bishop e6.
Yeah,
If you are forced to go rook g1, I think black will be reasonably happy by this development, because white's entire, well, not entire, but a lot of white's pieces will be tied up to hanging on to this g5 pawn, and black will play king f7, rook a d8, and yeah, the bishop on h4 looks strange, but it cannot really be attacked by any piece, so it's not trapped. It's sort of lying there in wait and putting pressure on the g5 pawn.
Yeah. No, of course, the moves here, bishop takes c7 could be an option. I have a feeling Elyanov has put this to a great deal of scrutiny, because this is a strategically very risky Berlin, so it's the kind of thing you analyze move by move.
Hard to imagine him doing this without serious preparation. And I think that actually is everything.
Let's do a brief update.
Sure.
Sorry, on the Navarra against Caruana. I have a feeling that game might not interest us all that much later, but since it's one of my pet openings, I'm very curious. b6 has been played. Oh, hang on. He played rook b8 here. That's supposed to be a mistake. Like, not a serious mistake, but it's not supposed to be the main move. He's probably analyzed and decided you can make a draw here as well, but as far as I know, and I know far, you're supposed to take here and then decide between queen c4 and queen takes e5. Well, rook b8 I thought gave white a little something, because now you can't challenge a d-file anymore, which is a big difference.
Yeah, allowing rook c5, rook c7 seems really, really dangerous.
Even allowing c5 here and then b6, c6, normally you can't get away with. So he has to play b6, which was the idea.
Yeah, what he did.
c5 is on the board, which is a very logical reaction against bishop b7. You want to go c6, and after bc, rook c5. These endgames, this is something that happens quite regularly in these lines. Black often can make a draw a pawn down if he's very careful, but it's not going to be lots of fun, especially here.
No, not at all, yeah.
So instead, Caruana played f6, forcing the issue, and white has this cute little Zwischenzug, which was blitzed out by Navarra. C takes b6, the point being f takes e5, b takes a7, and we win the rook back with probably a winning advantage, actually.
Yeah.
So a b6 is forced, and now
the rook
white
went
has
back,
to decide where to go. You can either keep it on the e-file, or you could think about this, but that allows bishop a6 with tempo.
Yeah, I think this is why he played rook e2, because the fact that the e6 pawn is still hanging makes black waste another tempo on something. And then he can switch, let's say, both rook to the attack of the b6 pawn, which is the only weakness remaining.
Caruana's blitzing, so I have a feeling he's analyzed this, but yeah, what I thought was that all these positions were very unpleasant to hold. After e5, we can't go f4 yet because of bishop g4, but we can play a move like rook
d6 or rook b2 or any of those moves connected with bishop d5 check here or possibly later. Yeah, it doesn't feel like black equalized completely, but
no, that's what I'm saying. Rook b8 is supposed to be suffering.
Yeah, and my somewhat startled look, if anyone caught it a second ago, was due to the fact how Ifan just played queen f3 in a position where white generally made more natural-looking moves. But yeah, I think that this will be the game Jan just chose will be our focus for a while, because it's understandably has provoked the most interest. As far as I could tell, early indications are people are completely well, bewildered by what's going on in this game, and so are we, frankly. But it's an interesting position to look at, even without moving any pieces.
Yeah, it looks like Ding Liren has been surprised by Queen H4 check. He's taking time. It's probably one of those where the computer gives G3, Knight G3, Bishop F2 with a big advantage, and then you have to dig deeper to find something. And Wei Yi must have done that.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what that might be here. There's all kinds of weirdness. Even, I mean, Queen E7, weird as it is.
Queen E7 here?
Probably not, yeah. No, I thought, yeah.
Nah, yeah. Even have D6.
Can't really believe that, but... there is a simple Queen H3 after G3, but then White probably will castle queenside. It looks dangerous, but if White is in time to follow this up by Bishop D4, the king on C1 will feel reasonably safe. So it's a question of a tempo here. If Black can find something immediate here, he might be doing okay. But if White can trade off the dark square bishops, White will be doing fine. Let's say Rook E8, Bishop D4, for instance, just checking the most straightforward mistakes. Rook D4, Queen G2. The bishop on E2 is hanging, which is kind of important because of the pin on the C file. So that probably means Rook E1 is the only move that doesn't lose material straight away. I was hoping to go Queen F2, but actually Rook D1 keeps everything together.
Still a mess.
Queen E3 check. If you're forced to go Rook D2, you get the feeling that Black might have something there. Rook takes B2 is a move, although it doesn't seem to work. Because Queen B2, King B1.
I have no idea what's going on. Black has to keep posing problems, else he's lost. But
yeah,
very possible those problems.
So this is very interesting. Also, as we mentioned, after Knight G3, Bishop F2, there's.
I have a feeling that's his idea. No, but one of those. No.
Queen F4, or what else is there? Let's just
E3, Bishop G3 doesn't seem to make
that doesn't make much sense. You can play Bishop takes C3, but I'm not sure what that actually achieves, apart from making White take with a pawn.
Because if Queen takes the pawn, it's Knight takes E2, hitting the Queen with tempo,
and that probably
is very easy.
Yeah, that probably is fine for Black, despite him being a pawn down in that endgame. But after BC3, I still struggle to find a proper continuation for Black. Because we did exchange a very proud piece there, which generally you would like to keep.
No, we can't give up this guy if there's no direct price.
Yeah, it's a huge mess, and I'm very curious as to what will happen here, because Ding probably will have to play G3, because Bishop F2, Queen F4 castles is much less critical, and it's unlikely that that Wei Yi only analyzed G3. So psychologically, when you're faced with Queen H4 check in a position you felt you analyzed properly, but now your opponent played something you did not expect, and you very much would like to do something which your opponent hasn't analyzed properly. But the thing is, he quite certainly analyzed everything here. So even playing Bishop F2 doesn't really save you from the next 10 moves being blitzed out. Right. So generally you end up playing what you think is the most critical move, and not just trying to dodge what your opponent has prepared.
We'll get back to it. I have a feeling Ding Liren is going to take a longer time out here. We haven't yet visited the game of our favorite and our viewers' favorite. I'm half tongue-in-cheek. Anish Giri, the Dutch #1 and world number, wherever he is currently in the rating list, he's been going back and forth between 2 and 7 more or less. But he's had a good year. Scored +5 in the Grand Prix, and he's playing a very slow setup against Tomaszewski today.
The
Russian champion. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, but I'm slightly surprised by the approach he chose here. After Bishop F5, C4, E6.
All this has become very fashionable. They used to play all these old setups, D3, Knight B2, Queen E1, E4, where Black is fine, but C4s in the reti in all kinds of positions have been all the rage.
Yeah, but here, c takes d5, e takes d5, followed by d3, let's
slow
say.
prep d3, knight c3, queen c2.
Yeah, all this. I played this myself with white. It's not really stupid at all, I have to say. It's very playable. And this, I think, is what people have been doing, and this is how white has been trying to achieve some kind of an opening advantage in this line recently. But Anish did something quite different. He started with queen b3, which is something they do, but I don't think in this particular position. And now he went d3, knight bd7, and he took on d5 only here.
That's the first move that surprises me. I thought the idea was normally to play bishop e3 here.
He's also done this almost instantly. I was so curious, I actually checked the timings on the website, and it seems like the first move, I mean, c takes d5 took him about a minute and a half, so it's hard to imagine this being over the board inspiration somehow.
No, it's not. Never is with Anish. He's well prepared in whatever he does, even if it looks like he's playing 1g3, he's just goofing around. He has analyzed everything.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm very curious why he thinks this is so great, because after cd5, Yevgeny very understandably took on b3, making white structure on the queen side look a bit suspect.
Also, if you go ed5 here, you have to at least consider white no longer fencing in exchange of queens.
I think queen c2 would be a move that white would play here. Yeah. So queen b3, ab, e takes d5, and bishop g2. All of this played very, very fast. And the plan, I guess, especially bishop d2 kind of gives it away, I think, is to go for b4, knight g4, and b5. But if black plays, let's say, a6 here, you probably still go, something like knight g4, bishop g6, b4, and I play rook c8. Black's queen side is now, very, very solid. Although what they do here is they play something like knight b3, knight a5, maybe, or maybe this knight to a5.
I'm not so sure. I believe Wang Yue win a very nice model game in this structure I forgot where it was. I believe it was against Lu Shanglei, maybe. You can check it out. He's been grinding away in this position. And yeah, I don't know, this particular position we have on the board, I quite like white. You have bishop a3, you have f4, f5 to embarrass this bishop, and you have the plan to put either knight on a5, control the dark squares. I think this is quite tricky.
I'm actually, I'm coming around to that point of view. I started off thinking that just by stopping knight g4 and b5, black gets a very comfortable setup. But yeah, once the knight lands on a5, and you also shouldn't discount plans with f4 followed by
e4. This is a
e4.
constant pain, because if the bishop ends up on h5, you might just get trapped by all these pawns. If you have to play whatever, let's say. Let's make a normal move. If you have to play this, sometimes it can work, but this bishop will be out of play for a while, so it's certainly a
also
resource.
white is not really obliged to do this. White can play f4 and wait on f5 forever, because this option will never really disappear.
No, white just has a lot of options. You can also go knight d2, prepare e4 here.
I would maybe even go for that over the plan with f5. Sorry, my voice seems to be disappearing.
That's okay. No, I believe Anish... Well, I always believe in Anish's preparation, but I think this plan long-term is very dangerous. I was curious if we can do something extremely direct here, like knight to c5, hit this pawn.
Knight d4? Maybe actually return it, return it there.
Somewhere here.
And go knight e6.
Yeah.
Let's say before immediately go knight e6.
Yeah. Because this bishop on g6, I've played this position with black. It can be very much out of play, many lines.
Probably still knight b3 here. You don't really want to trade too many pieces so early. Followed by bishop c3. Followed by bishop c3, knight 1 d2. Yeah, no, this is...
It's a position, but I'd take white for sure. It's easier to play.
Yeah, this is quite interesting. Yeah, my initial reaction was this shouldn't be a problem for black if he is, well, sort of paying attention and half alert. But yeah, I'm slowly coming around to Anish's point of view here. I think it's very interesting and might be quite decent.
Also, I'm not that booked up, but I have a feeling knight bd7 is not the main move here, because sometimes they want to keep the option, especially in these queen b3 ab structures, to put it on a6 to control.
I'm not sure. I honestly feel that queen b3 already is slightly rare, and people have been taking on d5 there more than they were doing anything else.
We'll find out, but as usual, interesting opening stuff from Anish Giri. And of course, should he not win this game, we will call him the most boring player in history, going for a queen exchange.
You're using the royal we again, are you?
Yeah, I mean,
I've been very, very careful around Anish. You know, he's very, very sharp and quick to retaliate. So must be on my toes.
Okay,
With
so
this, yeah.
I won't share on the air what you said about him. That was really
Yeah. G3 knight takes G3 in the
such filth out of your mouth.
Wash it out with soap.
Yeah, this is on the board. I cheated for a second earlier, I have a confession to make. I asked the computer's opinion, and the computer, after bishop f2, gave the move rook takes b2 here, which you better prepare at home.
Yeah, and the explanation for this is kind of hard to understand, even seeing this on the screen. I guess if you play queen b2, bishop c3, queen takes c3, and knight e2, white apparently is obliged to take on h4 here, because after king takes e2, I guess queen g4 check, or maybe bishop b5 check first, actually.
I'm also not sure if this works. The computer gives white an edge here.
Yeah, but it's one of those positions where your initial assessment, not your, the machine's initial assessment doesn't really count for very much, because black is a whole rook down, and you do need to give it some time to understand the implications of black's positional compensation here, because black is not really giving mate here. Bishop g3 keeps things under control, and Wei actually has already done something else altogether, so we can stop discussing.
Let's discard that. I just thought I should share. Knight queen to h3 has been.
Yeah, this is now completely inexplicable to me. Bishop g3, and seemingly white is a piece and a pawn up, and black has no direct threats for now. But I guess long-term assessment changes, because it's very difficult to imagine anyone playing this without checking it with the computer. Bishop takes g3 has to be played, nothing else really exists. You probably start by playing queen g2 here, I suspect, to make white go rook f1 and activate your rook, put it on a slightly better square. Because if you castle, I can take on c3 and at least win a piece back.
Queen c3,
rook e8,
yeah.
No, rook e8, rook takes c4, queen takes b2 mate is a reasonably convincing line. Yeah. This doesn't work at all for white, so he will have to take with a pawn. I can take on e2, and the king on c1 does not really feel particularly safe here. I think black is by far the happier of the two here. I don't know if he is already much better or not, but I would be very, very worried with white here. So queen e2, rook f1, and maybe something like rook ec8.
Really?
Creating a threat of rook takes b2, which is a large threat. And not that easy to face. Rook f2, queen g1 check, and still rook b2 I think is very strong here.
Total mess.
Yeah. We are currently doing this.
This is just
it's us clicking.
Unplugged.
Yeah, it's us clicking. Bishop c3, rook c3, rook b1 check. Yeah, you get the feeling this will end up being okay for black at the very least. f1 is falling. e3 check. I'll probably throw in e3 check here, because I don't want to trade too many pieces. I want to continue playing for mate.
Yeah, if anyone has an engine running, forgive us. It's just getting a feel for the position, but I'd be scared.
Rook e3, rook f1, I'd be completely... King e3, rook e8 check. Rook e8 check, rook f1 next move.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
Yeah, it's very, very dangerous for white, and it looks like a complete free roll for black, because, there should be a perpetual in almost any position here, but it might be more. So, very, very exciting opening idea, and he plays rook e8 immediately, without queen g2 even.
And as we can see by the clock, he hasn't spent any time. Obviously.
No, but clearly this is not a line you can play without checking it properly. So his speed of play is the least surprising thing about it.
And so far, people in this tournament have been trying to avoid him getting to his spots, so to say, not to give him a tactical mess and make him play slightly quieter position, and he's gotten in trouble once in a while, but has defended very well. I feel like he's excited today. He got what he wanted. A sharp Grunfeld gets to show his opening preparation skills and his calculating skills later on. Ding Liren, of course, also tremendous calculator and the higher rated of the two. But I have a feeling Wei Yi's enjoying himself right now, blitzing out rookies.
Yeah,
here.
who wouldn't be? I mean, if you find an idea like this in an opening variation, you're itching to play it because so many of these things kind of gather dust in your files for years, and nobody ever plays the line against you, and you feel sad. And when you eventually find, get a chance to showcase some of it, I can say from experience that it's a glorious feeling when finally you get to brag, so to speak, to the world of your investigative powers.
Clicking powers. Magnus Carlsen doesn't rely so much on his clicking powers. He relies on getting some sort of position that his opponent might not be that familiar with. Let's briefly go through the opening. Kayakin went for the old main line, so to say, c3. Carlsen threw in a6, which
I think they do these days, yeah.
And d6, he's transposing to what you mentioned, this sort of, whatever it's called, delayed Steinitz.
Yeah, enhanced Steinitz, we call it in Russian for some reason.
Which is a line he's played quite a bit. He's played it against Vishy and many, many strong players. Of course, White has many moves, d5, de5, rook e1, h3, bishop e3. You name it, but rook e1, one of the main moves, not determining the structure yet and waiting for this knight to commit. If it goes to e7, sometimes d5 is interesting. If it goes to f6, then often White wants to play d5 as in the game, because now at least there's no direct f5 happening.
Yeah, knight e7, he took on d7 straight away, knight takes d7, and now a move bishop e3, which I think is important to include here, because what he wants to do is prepare for f5, using the fact that Black needs to spend the tempo stopping knight g5 from happening. h6, knight fg2, I think, was very likely to be his plan. f5, f3. Followed by c4, knight c3, and kind of a King's Indian without the light square bishops.
Yeah, on paper this is a good King's Indian, because if Black goes for the typical plan to checkmate on the king side, you're not going to be able to do it without the light square bishops. This is sort of a well-known fact, and in a normal King's Indian it's always very hard for White to exchange those. So Black, in all these positions, I'm not even sure if he starts with knight with h6, going for f5 here, sort of has to find different plays. Sometimes it's connected to going for c6, sometimes it's connected to keeping the tension here and trying to make something happen with knight f6, knight h5. But I like this plan with bishop e3, knight fd2, because quite often you don't get this if you play the routine c4.
Yeah, if you start by playing
h6, knight c3, castles.
Yeah, you might not be in time, because now knight fg2 actually loses a piece to f4. So you will be stuck with a knight on f3, and you will have great trouble transferring it over to good squares.
So Kayakin certainly has seen this position, or at least knows some ideas here.
Yeah.
Magnus Carlsen, I don't know, he's struggled a bit with Black against Kayakin, not so much in losing a lot of games, but getting out of the opening with the sound position. Kayakin, as you of course know, one of the best prepared players in the world with White.
Yeah, he works very hard, and he should be working very hard right now, because it's less than 2 months until the candidates, and we're all preparing in our own way. I'm sitting here talking about him whilst he is playing in a very strong tournament. Each to his own.
I think you're doing a bad job at preparing. Watching him, he's wasting his energy, and Magnus Carlsen shows his understanding by going knight e7 to g8. Don't try this at home, kids.
Bishop h6.
He wants to go here, and if White stops there with queen d2 or queen c1, he possibly wants to enforce his will by going h5 to exchange this bad bishop against White's good bishop.
Yeah, illustrating once again that you spend the first 10 years learning the hardcore rules of opening play and development, and then if you progress further, you kind of forcibly unlearn them. Knight e8 is not really...
This position, it looks much more likely that Black would have just played knight ge7, not knight eg8. Because knight e7 showing understanding, keeping the way open for the f-pawn, not blocking with knight f6.
Yeah, it's a striking choice, I have to say.
I'm not sure if this is any good. This is a question I've wrestled with facing the King's Indian or all sorts of g6 over the years. That as a kid, let's say in this structure, you start learning, you have to exchange this bishop because it's a bad bishop against a good bishop. But the price you have to pay, like wasting a lot of time in such a position, when it's worth it and when it's not worth it, I find one of the tougher things to understand in chess. Like if we get something like this, and White has gained a lot of time to kickstart his queenside initiative, I've come around in many positions to think this is still quite unpleasant for me.
Yeah, I'm very surprised because doing it whilst the knight is still on g8, yes, very much so. But actually spending 2 tempi and returning the knight to its starting position to do it is, it's not something I've seen very much of. I'm quite surprised about this. But I mean, from a positional standpoint, yes, it does make sense because the bishop on e3 is the best piece White has. It supports the b4 c5 plan, and trading it off is very sensible from that viewpoint. But
also, so maybe much I can play more accurate, because the thing is with, if you go let's say I play c4, which looks normal, you go bishop h6, I takes, and I go, let's say queen d2. You have to waste more time with this knight, like either to g4 and f6 when you can never go f5, or all the way back to g8 when you can never do anything. So yeah, it's a huge time investment, and White's structure is not bad here. White has perfectly normal knights for this position.
Not at all, yeah.
I don't know, it feels extremely risky to me.
It does feel like he is sort of deliberately playing with fire there, trying to provoke Sergei into, playing more aggressively and sort of in a sharper fashion than he normally would have done. But it could also be that he just simply believes this is the best move in the position.
Absolutely. A lot of action in the chat. Sorry, we haven't gotten a chance yet to check it out in detail. Looks like our friend Lawrence Trent, aka The Jinx, made an appearance. Hi, Lawrence. We were glad to see him in the studio last week doing some commentary. He might pay us a visit next week as well. He's in town. He was in Vikensee.
I'm about to be very, very heartbroken, I think.
If he shows up?
No, because I think Dingler and Wei Yi is about to finish in a draw.
Okay, let's go there.
Tell me it ain't so. Oh God. Yeah, this is sad. I mean, sometimes these positions do end in a perpetual, but I was so much hoping this was something crazy and we could talk about this for hours. But it seems like after rook e8, Ding decided to bail out by repeating with queen a1, bishop f1, queen g4, bishop e2, queen h3. They've already repeated twice.
Yeah.
Or maybe even more than twice. Yeah, I think if black goes queen h3 now, it's threefold. So maybe Wei Yi already sort of put queen h3 on his score sheet and the arbiter is called and whatever. I'm not even sure if they need to do this in Vik. I don't think there are Sofia rules in Vik.
No, not really.
It is some rules. It has been drawn. We now have an official result on the screen.
That's a pity. Still a fun opening. Some nice opening idea we've been shown. But yeah, a draw in half an hour, of course, is.
Oh, it's understandable because it's quite possible this is the correct outcome in this position, but we would have had so much fun discussing all the options White has and why it's not good, and now we just have to assume that both players, well, at least Wei Yi, I have a feeling, knew the answer, and Dingler decided not to test his knowledge and went for the safe option there. Very understandable when you're faced with a sacrifice like this, but still, for me as a Grunfeld aficionado, I was expecting, the continuation of hostilities.
Good news is, one game that's not going to end in a quick draw is the game between Luke Van Vele, his Najdorfs rarely end in quick draws, against the strongest women player in the world. I think we can still say that now that Judith Polgar is retired, in spite of the rise of Maria Musicchuk and others. Because this is a very tricky position. This G5 structure, that's another thing that I find very hard to understand when it's good, when it's not.
I quite like this. I think in general this is a very decent choice for black in many cases, many cases. And h4 is simply met by rook g8,
sure.
And attacking this pawn on g5 is not at all easy. And black just continues developing calmly, safe in the knowledge that his king side is now quite secure. He will probably have to play with the king on e8 for a while because black doesn't really want to castle kingside, but it's reasonably safe on e8.
That's the thing I've been struggling with, let's say, whatever, long castles. Sometimes white can go f4. I'm not sure if it'll lose a piece here. I have a feeling probably not, because something bad could happen. But let's say we get a normal position like Something like this. Understanding these positions, at first I thought this has to be nice here, the powerhouse of a knight on e5.
Yeah.
It's very hard to find any square for the king, and quite often white manages to play around it, bishop e2, rook f1, put some pressure here. And I've seen bad things happen in this structure sometimes.
No, absolutely. It's a tricky structure to play for both sides, but yeah, generally my impression was that g5 is a decent choice in these positions, and Luki did not take too much time on it. I think he felt this was a good and a safe choice.
Also, we have to address white's last move before g5, which, once again, it's a bit of a don't try this at home situation. Queen f3, not very common, but this idea has been seen. Knight bd7.
I'm not sure if it was seen in if it has been seen in this position. Queen f3 has become very popular in a lot of different Sicilians, but actually not that sure about this one.
We'll find out, but queen g2 here immediately, that's the rare move.
Well, g4 was hanging.
It was, but still. Is that a maneuver you're familiar with? Queen f3, queen g2? I can't remember ever seeing this so early. Like queen g3 I've seen, or even queen h3 threatening g5.
Oh, in this position I would actually probably put it on g2, because you want all of your pawns as protected as possible. You also safeguard yourself a little bit for now against the play with b5, because e5 will be a decent tactical response. The rook on a8 will hang. So no, queen g2 didn't shock me at all. Queen f3 did, but queen g2 I felt was the way to go here. And Evgeny Tomashevsky did play what you suggested, which I think is very decent in that position.
He's not that bad at chess. He's the Russian champion.
I was trying to compliment you, not him. We know he's not bad at chess, but it is your suggestion, and
yeah, I'm saying.
Still up to b4, knight a6, knight b3. I think white has every reason to.
I think white is slightly better for sure.
Yeah, bishop c3, knight g2. If black plays g4, trying to stop bishop c3, b5 is maybe very strong. Knight a3, knight c4 is also a very decent plan. So,
no, Anish Giri also not terrible at chess.
Yeah, master of understatement.
Anish, nah. People say he's very outspoken actually.
Okay.
Wesley So against Mohamed Yarov, we've not paid much attention. I should start paying some more attention as an e4, e5 player. I've never, well, I know this move exists, but I've never really bothered analyzing it. And Wesley So now twice in a row it looks like he's got an interesting play with it. So
I'm less sure about today, to be honest. He did get a very, very decent position against Fabiano, but his position right now against Shahryar does not seem like it's a lot, to be honest.
Here I'm slightly... Okay, it's always a tricky choice, but even if you take here, I'm guessing his knight maneuver was tending to take back with the knight now, but after bishop e6 in these positions, if you don't have something immediately, tends to be absolutely nothing. So I'm not sure
Shahryar also made a very natural move, but I think this sort of played into Wesley's preparation, because after that, Wesley took on e6, took on a7, and he played d4, which I have a feeling Shahryar felt was not exactly possible here, because the pawn on e4 optically will be hanging after e takes d4, but it is possible because after g4, e d4, knight f takes d4. If you take on e4 with a rook, there is a double attack. You take on e4, knight takes, you take on c6, b takes, and you go queen d4, knight c5, b4, and it seems to win a piece. Therefore, black is currently, black has been forced to go for a slightly inferior structure.
That's what I'm saying, and this, I don't know, I guess it depends on the tactical details, but I'm always feeling a little uneasy if I have to go for this rook takes a7, because pretty much always you need to spend the tempo more or less instantly on going back.
Actually, I'm sort of curious, considering d4 has been played after rook a7, could you take with a knight here?
Where one what?
Bishop a7, knight a7. Is there an argument to be made for this? Because here d4 I think will be much more awkward. If I place d4 here, after we take on d4, he will have to take with the queen. We'll play knight c6.
No, this is fine.
Queen d3, we play queen e7. We put immediate pressure on the or d5 immediately, but queen e7 I like even better. Because white continues to be forced to make very awkward moves. Knight fd2 here seems to be needed. Rook e8, f3 will have to be played. And yeah, d5 here equalizes d5 immediately probably, and e5, queen c5 check. Maybe black is even slightly better, to be honest. So maybe you could actually make an argument for knight takes a7, because if white cannot play d3, d4, his entire previous play is, put into a little bit of a question.
Yeah, next move is knight c6, which comes down to the same as rook a7 followed by rook a8.
Next move might even be d6, d5, to be honest.
Isn't it? Yeah.
So, yeah. I think it may not have been as stupid as all that. Because in the game now, also it's notable that Wesley took with the f3 knight. Because in the position they have on the board, the knight on c3, on c2 will go to e3, which is by far the best square on the board for it. Controlling g5, controlling f5. Yeah, black would like to do something immediately, because if white... Whoa, such drawing skills. Much wow. Please stop. Yeah, if black doesn't equalize straight away, white will get some pull here.
Something's gone wrong. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's rook takes a7, or I have a feeling one move earlier also. But time to look at this a4 stuff. And what do you want to do immediately? d5 doesn't seem to work.
D5,
I don't know which
even
move.
rook a1, but also
D1
simply e5.
or e5. Yeah,
simply
it's all
e5
bad.
seems to be giving white decent pressure.
Yeah, this is bad. I think you would have to go here, but here you're way too slow.
F4,
Yeah.
F4, 93. Yeah, it doesn't really feel like black. I think one thing Wesley's approach definitely was successful at is lulling Shahryar into a slightly false sense of security. I think he felt that, it's a position in which his moves, to a degree, do not matter all that much because, well, it's such a quiet position in which nothing will ever happen that you can play by hand, so to speak. And this is no longer true. In this position, you do need to pay a lot of attention.
Actually, I don't think it's ever been true. The thing with this Juco piano, with all these positions, is you have to pay a lot of attention for the next 5 moves. You have to make very sure your timing is correct. You exchange the right pieces. You don't allow d4 under good circumstances, or you get in d5 under good circumstances. Then it's normally equal. But yeah, as someone who's played this position a lot and lost it more than one should, I have a feeling in these positions you really have to be super focused, and then if you do your job well, the game can be over at move 23, or equal at least. But
yeah, all of this is very true, and you do get the feeling that Shahryar was slightly haphazard in his approach, and I'm kind of wondering if he needs to go c5 and d5 right now.
I don't like his position one bit. This reminds me of these Maroczy grinds where if you end up with just a pair of knights and white has a space advantage, it's very unpleasant to play. You can follow up on both sides of the board. It's very
and this is why I think that black sort of has a one-move window here before the knight lands on c3, on e3, to do something. So can we check this for a second? c5.
Where do we go?
Yeah, that was my question to you. Queen c4, you could make an argument for, but it's slightly artificial.
If it works, it works. Queen c4, g5 is a question.
Yeah. And Shah decided not to do any of this, so I guess it's somewhat immaterial now. But yeah, I felt that if you do what he did and just ignore all this and play a5 or some move like that, you will not have to suffer for a while. Knight e3. I guess he just feels he will play b6. And material is so limited that now that he's more or less closed down the queen side, it will be incredibly difficult for white to create anything on the queen side in this position.
I'm not so sure. I'd be very, very worried here. Like, nothing direct, but there's so many plans. c4, knight d5 sometimes, b4 sometimes.
That is one topic I wanted actually to touch on briefly, because let's just put this on the board. Let's say c4, queen d7, knight d5, knight takes d5, c takes d5, rook e7. The thing about this position is, I think it's fair to say that there is such a thing as an Azerbaijani chess school. There's a lot of young players there who are playing and working together, and great friends. And Rauf Mamedov, for one, I think, has been playing this structure. He's been getting it from the King's Indian, so his kingside structure would be slightly different. But here it's actually better for black than what Rauf normally gets, because Rauf gets this position with the pawn on g6 and not h6.
Let's show it briefly.
Yeah, d4, knight f6. So you know the moves. Yeah. Sure. Let's go. Knight e3, bishop g7, e4, d6, knight f3, castles, bishop e2, e5, castles, ed4, knight g4, rook e8. f3, knight c6. I actually played this line myself when I was a King's Indian player. It's not a bad line. Bishop h3, knight h5. But it's not a great line, yeah. And I think here he goes, no, I think he, yeah, maybe from this move, yeah. Knight f4, knight takes e2, queen takes e2. And he generally just kind of takes on d4, goes bishop e6. Maybe not precisely in this order, but yeah, something like this. And they just snap off on d5 here. Go queen, I don't know, f6 or d7 or somewhere. They double protect the c7 pawn and go for the f5 break. It looks kind of horrible, but I think I haven't seen him lose this once with black.
It's not easy. I've spent some time here because it's part of my white repertoire. It's not obvious how to break this down. White is better, of course, but it's very hard to, yeah. Black has his automatic plan. If you don't do anything, he will get enough counterplay to equalize. So sometimes you have to go for some g4s. It's not easy.
Yeah, so what I mean is Shahryar is very likely to get something very similar with actually a slight improvement, because I think you would prefer the pawn on h6 and not g6. Yeah, and also you will probably prefer the pawn on a2 and not a4 to have more leeway to do something on the queen side. So yeah, it's not something I would be particularly happy about if I were black, but it's not very much for white.
No, but that's just one idea. White is not forced to go for
Not at
c4,
all.
knight d5.
Not at
I'd
all.
also be concerned about whatever plans like this: g4, h4, king out of the way, rook g1.
Sure, I think he probably wants to go queen d7, queen 6, queen c5, because this queen on d4 needs to be challenged somehow. But yeah, I mean, clearly white is slightly better here. There's no argument. I'm not trying to make an argument for this being equal. I'm just saying that the Azerbaijani players, they, I mean, they've been going for similar positions for ages. Absolutely. So it's not, you know, without the realm of possibility. I know within is possible, but without outside the realm of possibility. Yeah, there is knocking without. This actually exists, but yeah, outside. Sorry about all the. I mean, I'm very fascinated by weird linguistic questions, but
the common tongue. We try to master the common tongue.
Yeah.
That's tough. Bishop h6. I'm not sure if this is the common way to play. Knight g8.
We were told on Twitter that this actually has been played before. Knight g8.
Anything has been played. It still looks extremely weird or extremely slow. Like the strategic idea is very well established, but I'm not sure if it's worth all these tempi. I really doubt it, actually.
Yeah, not at all certain. And Sergei played the move you thought was the best c4 because now, yeah,
He's a very decent player.
But now he hasn't, and I'm kind of surprised. I really like the idea of taking and going queen d2.
You don't even have to go queen d2, but it looks logical. But or queen c1, just hit that guy.
Hit that guy again and make black spend more time on this. I think knight g4 is stronger than knight g8.
I think he's arguing that he doesn't have to, because after knight c3, bishop e3, rook e3, knight f6, if we compare this to the line with takes, queen d2, knight g4, it's not obvious who's benefited. I'd rather have my queen on e3 to support c5 than the rook. But even here, he's probably quite happy. Still, is the rook so great on e3?
That's my point. Yeah, that's my point. I would prefer it actually only once. So, you know, which is why I thought your idea was so solid, because it made black continue all this jumping around, which doesn't seem to be really getting him much of anywhere, and improving white's position at the same time.
No, but I think we can agree that while Karyakin is a very decent player, we can't expect him to find all of my suggestions.
Very true. Very true.
Still, even with this included, I'd take white. What does black do? He can't think of f5 for quite a while. Like
right
here,
now,
for example.
I would go knight f6, a5.
This is free signs.
Yeah, this you can't do at all. It's important to illustrate, but yeah, they wouldn't cross Magnus's mind for a second. Knight f6, or maybe knight e7. But you still need so much time before you can play f5, because f5, knight g5. If knight g5 happens, you've ruined your position. So.
Yeah. Another big question in these structures is how does white want to maneuver? Like the b4 c5 plan is the obvious plan. Often one big question is if you want to regroup this knight, and I'm thinking maybe that's why he went rook takes e3 to free this e1 square to put it here, where it's quite well positioned to support c5, also control the f4 square if you ever want to go f4 or if you want to stop counterplay. Could be that that's what he has in mind.
Knight gf6 has been played in the meantime, and we'll see in a second if Sergei wants to go knight e1 here. It's a decent move because knight on f3 is not really doing very much.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's a funny thing if you analyze the King's Indian. This is not a King's Indian opening, but a King's Indian structure. With the computer, two of the main lines are always knight e1 or knight d2. And the computer always on the next move very strongly suggests a retreat to f3. Like in this main line King's Indian, you go knight d2, knight d7, and it gives knight f3 for at very big depth. And Sergei has played b4 first, which is a move you want to play anyway. It's important that here a5 can be comfortably met with a3 because this rook is still defended, and then you can think about what to do with your knight later.
Yeah, no, it will be interesting to watch. But generally, I think with all the bishops gone, Black is somewhat justified in wasting so much time because I think the king side will be much easier protected without the bishop on e3, and. Yeah, you probably still pick white, but nothing really bad has happened to black.
No, white is slightly better, but simplified position, it's not the end of the world. Another important thing is that black, at least for now, can't think of c6 either, because d6 is always hanging, because often it's quite counterintuitive. But after white played b4, you don't want to allow him to go c5. Instead, you want to go c6 yourself, and sometimes rook c8. Create some tension on the c file, so that black sort of holds the key to when the position is open on the queen side, but I'm not 100% sure how you prepare it, because this looks insanely slow, and here you're not in time to play c6 ever.
Rook c8 maybe.
Maybe, let's make a move for white, I don't know which one. Let's play my move for now.
Rook c8.
Maybe, yeah.
I'm also keeping a beady eye on the challengers group, because there are some important clashes there, but we'll get to that when there's a lull in action in the...
What eye? Beady eye?
Beady.
Beady, what does that mean?
It's something people say. Would be my best description. I don't think it's a compliment.
Trying to learn here.
Yeah, I don't think it's a...
I've heard of a lazy eye, but beady eye doesn't ring a bell. Anyway, we are gonna keep Peter's beady eye on the challengers group, and we'll get there once the action slows down a bit. Hasn't happened yet.
No, definitely hasn't.
Hou Yifan has played natural moves, in my opinion, long castles, knight e5, bishop e2. I believe she wants to go f4 next. I sort of recall her winning some game in this very structure. I can't remember against whom it was. I believe in one of the women's Grand Prix or something, after going f4. And
yeah. Black generally, I think, keeps the bishop on f8 because it's not doing very much on e7. It's a tempo, and also sometimes it goes to g7. I think queen c7, b5, bishop b7 is what they do.
Okay.
And then
this plan, this rule of thumb, whenever you have to castle queenside in the Sicilian, something's gone wrong for black.
It's not ideal, yeah. And also, since white probably does want to push f4 at some point, it's very likely. Putting the bishop on b7 makes a lot of sense because there it pressures the e4 pawn quite seriously.
Yeah, you start with this one because it's a move you always need, and then you have a look around. And yeah, I would expect her to go f4, but maybe you start with whatever.
Yeah, there's a lot of options here. You know, you can't really start any kind of a direct attack because with the pawn on g5, black is reasonably well covered for a while. It's very difficult to challenge his position directly in the next in the foreseeable future, so to speak. But
I'd be slightly tempted to commit suicide and move this knight 10th time. Is that?
Lucky played b5 straight away, so he does not share your enthusiasm for.
No, I'm not enthusiastic. Just in an ideal world, I'd love to have this, but I'd probably get checkmated in the meantime.
h4.
h4, knight f5, yeah.
I don't know, I'd get excited with white if I could sacrifice something there. b5, yeah, queen c7 is not forced straight away, so Lucky is going for, you know, immediate play against the e4 pawn. Also, potentially in some positions, b5, b4 might be decent, but probably not straight away because it ruins black's play on the queen side, and it needs to be connected with, you know, concrete gains of some kind.
He's trying to build a big bathtub, but it's worse than the normal bathtub because there's some holes on the sides. f5 and c5. Yeah. I don't know. I don't like it, but I never liked Luke's positions with black. That's not true.
That probably isn't true. Yeah.
Hardly ever. b4 on the board in the Giri Tomaszewski game. Yeah, this is gonna be a slowish grind we expect. Do we expect knight b3? We probably do.
I think knight b3 is a very logical continuation. You don't really want to trade this knight. It's an important knight. Although, I mean, taking on e6 and bishop c3 is not completely ridiculous, and bringing the second one over, knight g2, knight b3 to the same squares, and
but I don't even want to allow prep like this.
yeah, this actually loses
Might
the
be
a7
losing
pawn. Yeah, allowing it would be, well, you know, you would very seriously consider it with black, but the pawn is important. Okay, so
that's boring. This is over. Unfortunately, this is boring, but very exciting for me because this is my type of boring. Caruana played king f7. Yeah, e5 was probably too much, giving the bishop the d5 square.
Yeah,
and
I'm very curious as to why decided not to pick up the b pawn, because I think rook b2 followed by rook b1 would just flat out win that pawn.
I like f4 whenever you can get in f4, because I believe after king f7 now he was getting ready to play e5 and bishop e6.
Very possibly, but he's also getting ready to play king e7 and bishop d7. So.
In general, even if you win a pawn here, like I don't know, a2 is probably dropping, but if black gets this and then he can counterattack.
a4. I'm threatening a5, so here I will take on b6. I'll play a5 or rook a1 actually.
Yeah, it's still
I'd be worried with black. I lost positions like this with black. I remember I lost a position I felt I was completely safe in against Predrag Nikolic in the mid-90s, where you know we got some position where it was 4 against 4, and he had this outside passer on. I think it was initially even on a2 and a bishop on g2, and I thought, okay, I must be in time to do something about it. And 5 moves later, it was like halfway up the board and completely unstoppable. So.
No, this whole line is not easy, and I've mentioned this earlier, I'm very surprised he more or less blitzed out rook b8, because you're not supposed to do it. And yeah, f4 I quite like as well, even though maybe this was already well.
I think after king e7 his plan is to go rook eg2 and suggest to Fabiano that he has no moves.
Maybe he's read a book on prophylactic thinking. Artur Yusupov was just
maybe your
teaching
videos
me
were
this
leaked.
stuff. No, they're not out yet.
That's what you think.
Yeah, that's what
But
I
maybe
think.
David is, you know, a master hacker or something.
Not only the prophylactic thinking stuff, but he's clearly watched my video series, because I'm the only sicko in the world who's advertising this very, very boring line for white. But yeah, Fabiano's gonna have to work here to get his half point. Good news for his fans is he's quite good at working to get his half point. We've seen this in this tournament already against Wesley So and so on and so forth. But it's not going to be that much fun, I believe.
No, not at all. I quite like this idea of king e7, rook eg2 actually. It really does ask the question of what are you trying to play. So legal moves are really sort of
I'm more
few
of a
and
hacker, so I could say like bishop h3, bishop e6, but this might be just good.
yeah, bishop h3 might also be a very decent idea. I failed to consider that, but yeah. But after rook eg2, there's really very, very few moves you can make. You can play b5, but it sort of creates a target. Although it does prepare rook b6.
Yeah, well, you
Let's
go
say
here.
rook d6,
Still
b4.
say good luck making moves, sir.
Or rook c6 actually may have been very, very strong just now instead of this. Creating a rook c7 threat, which is kind of unpleasant to meet. And it's a dangerous position. Despite very limited material, it's a dangerous position for black.
Yeah.
Requires precision.
Things can go wrong here. If you're interested in this line, of course, I can highly recommend Jan Gustafsson's Queen C2, Knight F3, Nimzo Indian series in the Learn section, a repertoire for white. I'm still very surprised. I wouldn't expect to catch Fabiano Caruana off guard with this, because people have been doing this. Like, it's not, the secret is out.
And actually, I was about to say it's an assumption that he was caught off guard, but actually he is now down to an hour and a bit.
Yeah, he spent time, so it's not like he's blitzing out moves. He's found some precise way to neutralize this.
Yeah, it does feel like he wasn't entirely prepared for this line, which is not something you say about Fabiano very often.
Now, have a chat with his manager. Like, this is just bad managing. If Fabiano doesn't watch videos on Chess24, what is he doing all day?
Yeah, unclear.
I know he's into Game of Thrones, but it takes like a couple months till it comes back, so it's good timing for him. With the candidates, you can play the candidates and then get back to Game of Thrones.
Yeah. 96, Anish is still thinking. Hoyfine decided on a plan with h4 and not f4, and this is somewhat surprising because once you've played h4, you can't really play f4 anymore because the pawn on g4 will just be incredibly weak.
Yeah.
I wonder what her plan is after rook g8. Maybe she wants to take and go knight f3 using the fact that Luki played a slightly riskier b4.
Can I take?
Maybe that is her plan actually.
Not my pieces.
Yeah. I'm not at all sure. Rook g5, f4. No, rook g4 probably loses.
This feels like it should be troubles and...
Yeah, and tribulation, yeah. Trials and tribulations. Hang on. There is rook a7, ef, queen knight e3 there, but queen g8, queen takes f8, rook h8, mate comes to mind.
Let's put it on the board.
Ef, knight e3, queen g8. Queen takes f6 is a move here, but probably also not very happy for black. But knight g1, queen f8 is a nice way to get into all the miniature books.
That would be a nice way, and not the first time.
So yeah, rook takes g4 doesn't really look particularly convincing, but move 15, yeah.
The whole position doesn't look all that convincing. And I want tons of credit for spotting this bishop.
b4 maybe?
b4. Did you forget my rule?
What? No thinking?
No, never play b4 before is good.
Ah, yeah,
That's my other rule.
This I'm not that heartbroken about as black. I don't know.
Take or queen b6.
Or queen b6 or rook b8. There's many moves here.
Some counter.
Even cb2 queen f6 is I think pretty decent positional compensation.
Showing understanding by hiding behind the pawn. Use it to shelter your king. Don't take it because he might get mated.
Yeah.
Just pretend it's a white pawn. Sometimes better than a white pawn because there's no sacrifice like rook takes b2 check anymore.
g5. Yeah, I'm not so sure this is good for black to be honest, but it's kind of playable. But yeah, this...
I can also once again show my tactical genius by indicating this option, which is maybe not good here, but it's a cute tactic.
It's a move, yeah, followed by g5.
Here, and if you don't take, I'm gonna go here.
Yeah, this is a decent idea. And then rook g8, hg, hg is on the board, so Hoyfine does have the option of playing bishop takes g5 here if she's so...
I believe that's her idea, because I believe she understands that in general h4 is not the way to go. It's a direct reaction to Luki Boy. Once again, maybe lacking a bit of sense of danger by playing b5 when he could have started with this, which doesn't allow any trickery on this long diagonal. Let's say you go here, here, here. Now this whole idea turns into nonsense because...
Rook g4 is much stronger, but even let's say another good point is that even just rook g8, fe, d is quite good here because there's no knight takes e6. Queen has left the g8 square, and there are no shots along the g file anymore. Yeah, it's b5 surprised me a little bit because you do feel you do feel kind of safer the moment you play queen c7. None of these tactics ever apply, and yeah. b5 is ambitious because if it works, you're possibly saving half a tempo somewhere.
Yeah. No, and I'm being half tongue-in-cheek about all this Luke getting checkmated in Sicilians because, believe it or not, I actually rate him very, very highly as a player. We've talked about this before, and I've talked to him a lot about why don't you play the Berlin, play some safe position, you're a fantastic positional player, be 50 points high rated, but he enjoys these things way too much and also gets him invitations because he plays sharp chess and people know there's going to be action. I honestly think he's a great positional player. He should not go for these sharp knight-off fights all the time, but he likes them.
Yeah. No, I think he's at a stage in his career where enjoying what you do is kind of more important than your rating and your, the solidity of your repertoire.
No, you could argue about it right now, but we've had these discussions for 15 years, but...
Yeah. Very curious things happening in Navarra-Caruana game. Let's have a look at this. I kind
of went e5?
And white replied by fe5 instantly, which is even more interesting. Bishop g4. e6 check is possible, but then he will take on e6. It probably should suit black. Although maybe bishop rook d6 then. Maybe it gets awkward. Bishop c.
Let's briefly show this.
Rook 2 somehow loses. Rook 2 e6, bishop d5 and rook takes b6. It's not very difficult. Yeah, and here you don't take on e6
I
first.
want to go g4.
Also wins
That's
on the
because
spot.
I'm very pretentious.
Also wins on the spot. Yeah, good play. But rook b6 instead is probably forcing a resignation faster because it's just a pawn down, pawn endgame.
No, of course it's winning. I was just attracted by the fact that black can never do anything to unpin here, which is nice.
Yeah.
Just torturing. Still, this is not going to happen. Effie, the idea has to be bishop g4. After e6, if we try to be greedy,
Is that
go here.
Yeah. No, I'm very surprised because it's none of this seems to be particularly clear. And I get the feeling that we're missing something simple here, but I'm struggling to see what.
That's how we do it.
No.
Chet is also panicking. Relay error. Did Navarra really miss bishop g4? I do not believe he missed it. There's absolutely no way he missed it, but I'm surprised he allowed it.
Yeah, it's a little bit strange.
In fairness, I missed e5 as well in this position with this idea. But you can always play pretty much any move here. Rook d6 comes to mind, bishop d5 check. And you're still slightly better. Normally the move order is different. After e5 you go f4 trying to open it up. But if you play this, maybe black has improved his chances, but he's still suffering. So fe5, bishop g4. Did you activate your super grandmasterly brain and look for tricks already? I don't see any.
I don't see any. It actually does look like this is losing an exchange, which is really strange.
Check f5 doesn't help, and if you go anywhere,
even king h6. Yeah. I mean, you probably won't lose if you e7.
For starters, this is equalized easily now, but here you're probably losing now.
Yeah, I was trying to make rook d1 work, but takes rook bc8 solves all of these issues. Rook c7 next move, e7 pawn is just about to fall. This is very odd.
I must check with the computer for 1 second if we're missing some simple trick, because else it's just too confusing. No, the computer says black is better. That's insane. He must have missed bishop g4, and maybe he thought e5 was desperation. He wants to go fe bishop e6 and try to hang around, but I don't understand it.
Yeah, it's a
moment of insanity.
It's a bit weird, yeah. David in general is, first of all, he's a tremendous player. All of them are in this tournament, but also, I mean, he's very, very tactically aware. He's a very good tactician, and it just feels like it feels inexplicable because if not for bishop g4, e5 would never have been played. I mean, what did he think the idea of e5 was?
Yeah, and even if you missed it and you start panicking about bishop g4, you can make any normal move here and you're not worse in a million years. Rook d6, bishop d5, rook b2.
I would actually argue after rook d6 you're still slightly better.
Yeah, of course.
So, yeah, strange things happening, to be honest. I'm not sure what could be the explanation here, because it's really not a move you blunder, not even in a blitz game.
And that affects the tournament situation quite drastically, because if we write about this after bishop g4, Caruana all of a sudden is seriously better and maybe even winning when he's in the co-lead together with Magnus Carlsen on 5 out of 7. And if he picks up this point, we're in a position where under normal circumstances he would get like 0.35 points.
Yeah.
That makes a big difference.
Yeah, it actually puts some, well, it's only round 8, there's 5 rounds after this, so there's no real need for Magnus to suddenly drastically change his approach to his position, but still, Magnus will of course be keeping an eye on this, and
he won't be happy to see this.
No, I think he'll be, yeah.
Alright, one more strategy question. Karyakins play rook c1, which is logical in a way to prepare c5 long term.
Yeah, I would go a5.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you go a5 here because now this rook is unopposed on the a file? I believe you do that.
Yeah, I even would maybe go rook a3 here right away.
Right. And I wouldn't have played rook c1. I'm surprised by this. In general, you don't want to allow this because now there's some activity. Whatever, queen a8. Sorry.
Bless you.
I don't know. Strange things happening. Like this doesn't overly affect the assessment. If anybody's better, it's still white. But if black gets one open file and can use it to...
Queen e7, rook fe8, my next 2 moves. And I think it makes black's life slightly easier, yeah. Although maybe rook e1, knight b5, drive it away. It's not that...
Yeah.
You can't really go queen e7 here anymore because the c7 pawn is about to fall, so...
That's a good move, which I missed.
And if you have to go something like queen b8, it's all a bit...
Yeah, but even if I, whatever, go somewhere.
Well, you can start with this.
Maybe immediately, yeah. Maybe with the rook on e3.
Yeah, I am a little bit surprised Sergei relinquished his control over the a file so easily.
Yeah, because no, yeah, I have this plan you mentioned with queen e7, rook a8, and I have sometimes a c6 idea. No, I'm gonna come out and say it. Magnus Carlsen is not losing this position.
Honestly, I did not really feel like he was particularly worse even before that, to be honest.
No, fair enough, but yeah, I thought, well, I still think this knight g8 is pushing the boundaries of what you can get away with, but he hasn't been punished very harshly.
No.
Anish is trying to punish his opponent for his opening choice, and he's played knight b3. I don't know if the Anish punchlines really work. I don't think they do. I'll still keep trying.
Sounded... yeah, maybe I shouldn't encourage it.
No, anyway, Giri is looking to shift gears here and bring the knight to a5. Sometimes I try too hard. He's slightly better. It's not going to be a lot of fun for Thomas.
Bishop g4 was followed immediately by e6 check, so maybe David feels that... let's discuss this for a little bit. Let's say king g6, I play rook d1 straight away. You take, I take. You probably go rook bc. Yeah. The thing is...
yeah, let's start with this. This is smarter. We don't want the bishop here.
This is a problem, because I wanted to say, if I get bishop d5 followed by c4, I'm probably not that much worse. But rook takes c3 is actually a move. That's my bigger issue, to be honest. You can actually take this pawn. I don't really see any refutation of it.
Yeah.
Rook c3, followed by rook c7 yet again. Yeah.
No trickery.
No, I'm very, very confused by this.
No, e6, I believe, is easy to explain psychologically. You've blundered, you've realized that the second you played fe5, and then you blitz out a move pretending it was all part of the plan.
No, e6 you need to play, because if this pawn is exchanged, I think it becomes a technical task for black.
No, I'm saying the fact that he's played it instantly, that's...
yeah, no, I'm just trying to rationalize this and maybe find some kind of a way to explain this without, using the word blunder. But I'm struggling. I do think he missed this somehow.
Yeah.
But it's an incredibly weird miss, to be honest. I mean, it's the one tactic which exists in the position. Being unaware of it is very, very, very strange.
I'm thinking of a punchline with you rationalizing chess, but I'm not there yet. I'll let you know. Navarra's in trouble. I have a feeling he's going to lose this. Fabiano, he doesn't need many chances, and in a
he's generally very good.
Grind away technical position, he's going to be tough to deal with. In the So game, he's gone for queen b5, going for... If he gets this, I believe this is a very pleasant version of this structure, because you have the additional resource of playing b4.
Yeah, I don't think...
make a random move.
Yeah, I don't think Shahryar wants to take on b5 here. I think it's very, very unlikely he does.
Because this, I mean, you might survive, but here it's tremendous suffering, because these pawns aren't weak, they're controlling.
No, in this particular position there is rook e5, which I think solves black's problems reasonably well, but you can prepare it slightly better so that this doesn't happen. Yeah, I don't think he takes. I think he goes queen somewhere c8, e7, I don't know.
Probably not e7 to encourage this.
Even just sort of completely passing and playing something like g6 here, although I was earlier explaining why not having g6 on the board is beneficial to black, but maybe to stop knight f5 forever it might not be such a bad idea.
Well, status quo is unchanged. He's slightly worse, and he's gonna have to do not his favorite thing in chess, I would say. Defend his slightly worse passive position.
Yeah.
Question in the chat for you. What's your opinion on German humor?
Yeah, I think my facial expressions whilst you're doing your puns answer that to a degree, but...
You had this fantastic joke on the shortest books ever
It's not mine, I can't claim any credit for it, but there was a list on the internet some time ago I've seen, which was titled the 10 shortest books in history. Number 1 was Dennis Rodman, Things I Wouldn't Do for Money, but number 2 was the complete compendium of German humor.
So rude.
Yeah, I don't know why you forced me.
Nothing but insult us.
Yeah. You kind of tricked me into that, didn't you?
I've heard this joke in different versions. Like German humor is always in the top three, but normally I throw in like British cuisine and Italian fairy tales, stuff like that.
Yeah. And
Oh, we haven't checked Adam's Eliana for about 8 hours. Let's go there.
sure. Seems
Let's
like
go away.
B3 looked a bit vague to me.
Mickey probably felt like, you know what, I know you checked all this stuff with your computer, I'll make two randomish moves to get you out of preparation, and then we'll play some chess. But if you make two randomish moves here, Black solves all his problems by defending all this stuff.
Yeah.
B3, rook e8 with tempo. I'd take black, here's bishops.
I'm
Gotta
watching
move the knight.
watching a very decent boundary catch in South Africa, England. But it's not as horrible as it was about an hour ago, so at least I'm happy about that. Yeah, no, I think knight f4 now would be a... Can you avoid playing this? Because if you allow h takes g followed by f5, you really are slightly worse, I think.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. Maybe you can go here, but it looks very artificial combined with b3 as well, so not a big fan.
But I think you sort of... I mean, what I really dislike is playing knight f4 there. I think knight f4 there is an unfortunate move to have to make, so I would prefer more or less anything to...
If you go here, there's
Yeah,
no
a6,
idea of
a6, c5, yeah. Very good point.
Don't like it. C5, knight b5 is slightly awkward. Might also be possible, but
Although even this here followed by maybe by some kind of tactics with rook e2, but yeah, it
Yeah,
seems a bit early.
some moving around. I quite like bishop g3 actually, but yeah, this is the typical plan to go. Then followed up with c5 and f5. If you go knight f5, you're gonna be worse. I don't know. I feel like Mickey has not
He's still really
slayed the Berlin Dragon this time.
and generally I think he 8 rounds in, he is not feeling all that comfortable in this tournament. I was, you know, he was a very good friend of mine, and I always wish him well. And I was kind of hoping he would get to something resembling his best form later in the tournament. But it doesn't seem like he's playing with the confidence and assurance he displays when he's playing well.
Yeah, things haven't gone very well for him. We're gonna play our favorite game, 4-second evaluation, then we're gonna go on our first break. We've only had breakfast, so we need some food hunting, but we're gonna be back in a couple minutes after that. Let's do a very brief tour. Kajakin Carlsen.
I think it's a balanced position. I think it's fine for black.
Giri
I
Tomaszewski.
like white here.
Who you Van Veli?
It depends on bishop takes g5.
Ding Liren Wei Yi.
Was a draw.
Navarra Caruana.
Computer says black is better. White is ever so slightly better in Wesley against Shah. And I like black here.
Thank you, Peter Svidler. Thank you guys for watching. Tweet us, #C24Live. Get a premium membership if you want to support the Chess24 site. If you feel like a premium is too big a commitment, you can also leave a tip if you want us to continue doing our own live shows. Then yeah, we need every help we can get. So we're going to be back in a couple minutes with a couple more coffees. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Yeah, this cups, I really think you shouldn't drink this coffee.
I've finished mine.
Have you? Yeah, shit, okay. If you die tomorrow, I will feel...
Oh, hang on. I think we're still on the air. Do we... Welcome back to the show, everybody. It's Tata Steel, round number 8, with the two co-leaders, Magnus Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana, not playing each other, but surely eyeing each other, and we're gonna go straight to the Caruana game, where after King G6, Bishop E4 check is on the board, and you spotted something for white, didn't you?
I haven't. It's not that I spotted something, but the timing and everything. And knowing David reasonably well, I've been trying to think about this. And the position, let's say you play King H6, which I think you should.
What's wrong with F5?
I think E7 might work here for whatever reason. I'm not quite sure why.
Why?
Rook D6 check.
Ah, you have Bishop D5 mate, which is
It's
cute,
not really mate. No.
Yeah.
This is mate, but after King H5, I'm still not sure what my. Yeah, Rook D6, King H5. I'm not sure what's wrong with this, but something must be because. Well, because I don't know. Maybe Bishop F5. No, Bishop F5, Bishop E2. Yeah, I'm a little bit confused, but my point is this: King H6 is actually Fabiano has played F5 already, so I guess he agreed with what I was about to say. Let's go.
E7, he took on E2. Yeah?
He took on E2. Yeah, I'm not sure why Rook F8 is so wrong, to be honest.
I shall find out.
Yeah, there's Bishop D3 here apparently. Yeah, we should have been able.
Good.
Should have been able to spot this and H4 mate. Yeah, but the bigger point is this: King H6 after Bishop F4 check. No, not here. King H6, King F2. This is a move which I missed originally. Bishop E2, King E2, followed by Rook D6 against any move. Rook D6 anyway. And the king on H6 is a bit far away from the action. And during the break, I was looking at the evaluation of this, and the machine continues liking it very much for black, to be honest.
Hang on. Stream complaints. Why? Can you guys still see us? Give me a quick feedback here. Is anybody still watching this? And if not, why not? I'm gonna restart, I guess. Looks like we get nothing. Hello everybody, welcome. Hopefully back. I'm not quite sure, getting very mixed messages there. Stream is down, stream is not down. This is all rubbish. I want my money back. All kinds of good stuff happening in the chat. Apologies for it. We're trying our best. We're trying the YouTube live today. See how that holds up. But I do hope that you guys can hear and see us. People are very harsh when you're gone for 2 minutes here, 6 hours every day. Stream is down for 2 minutes.
Yeah,
they get very, very upset.
I refer everybody who is interested and hasn't heard it before to the Louis C.K. monologue on the subject of entitlement and.
That's the airplane episode.
Yeah,
Louis C.K. is good.
Louis C.K. is generally excellent, but that particular monologue, I think, is very, very relevant in today's world.
I agree. He made some good points, and you made some good points while the stream was down or not down about this Navarra-Caruana game.
It seems like after a really serious, longish think, Fabiano decided that playing King H6 here is very double-edged, and I also think that he felt it's unlikely this is not preparation. Judging by the speed with which David has been playing up to this point, I do think that Fabiano came to the conclusion that he's still playing against home prep, and that if he picks up this exchange, he is probably not better, although it might superficially look like he is. And he went for a safer route by playing Bishop E4, F5.
What I'm confused about, okay, we haven't looked that much at the current position, but it doesn't feel like white is better. It feels like these simplifications, even, yeah, if he didn't grab the exchange, have helped black to stabilize his position, no? Then if it's home prep, I'm not quite sure.
Well, it's still slightly better for white, I think, after something like Bishop D5 or Bishop C2, some move like that. It's still not entirely comfortable for black. Of course, it's close to a draw because there are so few pieces left on the board, but there's still some pressure. Let's say bishop d5, rook f6, rook d7. You probably need to play something like king g6 or king h6. I will play c4, fixing this pawn on b6 so that you don't play b5. If you do get b5 in, I think you're correct in assuming that this is not a huge problem for black. But this position, I would still feel white retains some pressure as Molinari slogs and is out, and not good.
So what do we think? We think it's still
should be reasonably close to a draw, but white retains some semblance of advantage here. This king is awkward.
shaky,
Yeah, if you don't play rook f6 here, king f2 could be very awkward actually for black, followed by h4 check.
Let's just show briefly.
Probably doesn't lose yet, but this probably does. Yeah,
This is probably checkmate
yeah.
somehow.
Drive it to h3 and then go rook d1 and rook h1 mate. Yeah.
So maybe we were wrong, or maybe Caruana decided to trust his opponent. Right now, material is equal. White still slightly better in Navarra against Caruana. We shall find out. In the Fanvili Huyu Fun game, she did not play bishop takes g5. She played another very typical move, especially with the queen still on d8. Knight back to f3.
Continuing to reinforce the point we were making, you know, that b5 was... It gives white so much more in terms of immediate tactical opportunities. Could still be okay. If knight f3, for instance, I can maybe go queen a5. Followed up by b4 against any move.
I'm not gonna troll and play knight takes e5 just to see the go b4. Still feels like there could be something.
No, it's not a safe position for black. Even, I mean, knight e5 might actually be the best move, followed by queen f3. It's kind of awkward for black. Because if you play knight d7, rook h7 is extremely annoying. If bishop b7, rook h6 could be extremely annoying. Although rook b4
Yes,
here,
I was wondering.
yeah, b4 here, and yeah, I'm not sure. Rook f6, b takes, rook f7. Who knows what this is? Queen h2.
Are we sure she does?
Oh god. Yeah.
Let's just show some
Rook
potential
e7,
lines.
yeah, king e7, bishop c5 check, king e8, and even queen takes c3 is probably completely waiting for white.
Might be.
Yeah. So,
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm in hardcore trolling mode.
no, it's fine. This is the game between Wesley and Shahriar Mamedjarov, and seems like not much is really happening.
No.
Black did not exchange the queens on b5 as we expected, and Wesley, having succeeded in playing b2, b4 and creating some potential new targets, has returned to d3 and will now look for additional plans, because his position optically looks very nice, but he still needs to find a way to make any kind of progress. Probably will have to be on the king side. I have a feeling queen side is very difficult to break down.
Yeah, he should survive, but it won't be fun, and I expect Wesley So to play on for a long time.
No, absolutely. No, there's no reason at all not to think you're slightly better here, but black's position is rock solid, and breaking it down will be quite difficult. Magnus took a small deviation from what we expected. He started with queen e7, but now he has played
Same
a5.
idea, though. Ever since his rook left the a file, this idea is in the cards, and maybe what he did was even smarter, because we had some lines where after rook a3, white went rook e1, threatening knight b5. Well, if you do this here, black might be ready to play c6.
Yeah, you could play c6 or c5. Yeah, one of those two moves.
I don't see a lot of trouble.
Yeah, a5, a3 is on the board, so we'll...
Well, even under normal circumstances, we should be headed for a draw. Dynamic equality here. I don't think Kayakin is in any trouble, but I also don't see how he can put pressure.
Objectively not, but I think, yeah, black is quite ready for anything white can create on the queen side, so...
A b4 on the board. No surprises there.
It's interesting if he goes rook a3 here, because he can also make a waiting move of some sort. He's not really required to do that, but I think it's a very natural move, and I think you probably want to play this.
Feels good, yeah, just to create some tension.
Feels good,
One
man.
problem...
Rook a1, maybe?
One problem is I just want to show my expert blundering skills. If you want to follow it up with c6 here, you have to be sort of careful about this trick, but he probably will be, and you could just start with rook a8.
No, if white does nothing, of course the next move is rook a8. So maybe rook a1, rook a8, take on a3, go queen c1, drive the rook away, and then play something like h3, and then once again consider your options. Magnus goes knight b6.
Oh, interesting. What's that about? He's saying you can't play c5 anyway, I'll tie you to the defense of the c4.
He also protects c7 for the future. Maybe wants to go next knight fd7 and remind white that there is the counterplay with f5 to pay attention to potentially later. Yeah, it's an interesting choice. Let's go back to Luki for a second, because he's done something I thought was very, very risky.
That's how he rolls.
I guess his idea is to meet e5 with b4, either immediately or after taking on e3. I'm not sure which is better. Because otherwise e5 is, I think, extremely strong. e5, you could go knight e3, fe3, knight d7, e d6. But e6 is not even forced. Knight d4 might be extremely strong here. Knight d4 followed by knight takes e6 might be mate.
Oh, Luki, this is gonna be another Sicilian nightmare.
No, I think you're overstating the case a little bit yet.
I like doing that.
No, here I think it's horrible. d5, knight e6 should be made, yeah. Check on h5. Knight takes d5. Queen takes d5 is nice, but doesn't work. Yeah, I was trying to make it work, but it doesn't.
Trying.
But knight d5 is seemingly completely crushing. Yeah, queen d6 is made, queen f7 is made. Yeah. Oh, come on. There are mate in one. Two of them. Mate in one threats. Yeah, this looks like black under normal circumstances should not survive. This queen b6 is probably the only move. And yeah, so e5 is the obvious response here for white. There are other moves as well, but I think you play knight f3 with the idea of meeting knight takes g4 with e5, because if you play bishop takes g5 here, your attack kind of loses impetus.
Yeah, this feels...
Yeah, queen c7 becomes a move, bishop b7 becomes a move. All of those,
b6, wouldn't it?
all of the improving moves black can make here. Those are huge tempi you don't want to give black.
Nah, 90% sure e5 is gonna push e5, and we don't see it, or you don't see a defense.
No, before, yeah. I think b4 must be the idea. I don't know if it's immediately or with the inclusion of knight e3 fe. This I can't really decide on.
Somehow. Might not be able to do it. Let me try that.
What's this?
I don't know.
This is probably the reason I should start with knight takes e3. I'm not sure this is so great, but I don't want to give you this opportunity. Okay, let's take the bishop. Fe and go b4 here.
Now I have other opportunities.
Yeah, knight d4 is very much a move here, but maybe I can play bishop d7 or something. Staying calm under fire.
Still have the feeling terrible things will happen.
It's not at all unlikely. I'm not really doing this to claim black is better or anything. I'm just trying to make moves which don't lose on the spot.
No, that's fair. I don't know, like... This, at least you have some counterplay. I'm not sure.
Take on c3, take on e5.
Maybe you should.
Yeah, take on e5 here.
Yeah.
This doesn't look horrible for black at all, to be honest. Unless I'm losing on the spot, but I don't really see why I should be. If you actually need to retreat with a knight to somewhere like b3, I think black is simply better.
Really?
Because his king is very safe. I'll take on b2, go queen c7. And yeah, I mean...
Oops, sorry.
Those pawns in the center and on the king side, they will at some point start rolling.
No, I'm sure I believe you.
I like this position a lot for black. I just don't think I will get it. Bishop b7. Followed by, I don't know, rook g6, king f8, g4, g3.
No, I'm looking for cheaper. I understand long term Black is fine. I was trying to make something work, but I'm gonna have to give up this task of sacrificing all of Yifan's pieces. Still, e5 feels right.
Yeah,
So
e5,
takes,
I
takes
have little
b4,
doubt this is correct.
and
But
here we have many options. Knight b5,
EF followed by knight e5, maybe? But queen b6 kind of drives me towards squares I don't want to occupy because it's a big threat, yeah? Yeah, I'm less happy about this. Because I was kind of hoping I will be able to get some knight takes f7 in, but the knight actually will have to go towards c4 or d3, and those squares are not ideal.
If I go here, you can go bishop d7.
My plan was to go bishop d7, yeah, and claim I'm stabilizing. But maybe it's not true. Maybe something like rook h7 followed by bishop h5 here is extremely strong. Yeah, black is still very, very discoordinated, and his rook on g8 and the bishop on f8 look like they are not really participating in action all that much. Yeah,
I don't trust it one bit.
Yeah, this position does look very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. I actually think that knight bishop d7 may have been a mistake. I think black might have to play g5 here to at least feel that, you know, his rook is not hanging in every single variation, or rook b8. Some move like that, because bishop d7, rook h7, I feel like it might be already lost.
Right.
Yeah, lots of options for how you find there, and I think she will now carefully assess what's going on, because you don't play, I mean, you don't really blitz out e4, e5, because there will be some rare occasions where this move is wrong and it loses. So you do spend some time checking, but it's, you know, by far the most attractive option optically, and you know, I think it's also the best one in the position.
The problem is with the slower move, bishop takes g5. I was thinking about bishop d4, but it doesn't threaten that much. Yeah, even maybe b4 is good. But
Queen c7,
c7,
bishop b7, any of those moves.
Yeah, we're not getting anywhere, so e5 just feels right.
Yeah. If you give black a tempo to make either of those two moves are the first one on my list, queen c7 or bishop b7, whichever one is better, is difficult to say. But the moment black gets this, his position starts looking much more harmonious, and yeah, you need to do something immediately, and e5 fits the bill quite well here.
We'll keep what was it, a BDI on it? Bleeding eye? I forgot the expression.
Apparently it's also a band. I wasn't aware it was a band.
BDI?
BDIs maybe, yeah.
Never heard of them.
I think it's usually you describe like a vulture has BDIs.
What's a vulture?
A vulture is a bird that eats carrion. What's carrion? No?
One can play this game forever. No, I've heard of... What have I heard of?
I've heard of many things, I'm sure.
Yeah, but not of BDIs.
Let's check the Berlin, because I think there has been some developments.
I don't like Mickey's position.
No.
At all.
Although he did seem to stabilize to a degree, because fg4 runs into knight h5. And if black cannot take, then maybe white will be able to trade off some pieces and equalize. I don't think there's any question of him being better here.
So what can black do? I would like to have my bishop somewhere on this diagonal.
Yeah. You would like to include it in the game somehow.
Let's try this, for example.
I kind of really want to go bishop b2 and start trading, but it actually maybe already allows bishop takes on fg4. Well, I do have some discovered checks there. And the rook on b2 is just so horrible that it gives me no pleasure to play bishop b2, but I still really like to... I would really like to start trading off some of these pieces, because the king on g1 feels unsafe. Yeah, I'm not sure. Knight h5, king g6, knight f6, but yeah, it doesn't feel right. On knight g5, knight c7 maybe, hang on.
Oh, this is easier.
Yeah, that actually does work.
Yeah, maybe it's not as bad.
Maybe it's not horrible, because actually taking on g4 is not that easy for black to achieve here. So
no, this bishop is so nice that if white ever gets bishop b2, he could even dream of being better. Like if you give me two moves to exchange this guy.
If black does nothing for a while, white will definitely be better. But
let's briefly go to Mr. Funchess himself, Anish Giri. I think they're the same age. Devin Funchess from the Carolina Panthers and Anish Giri from The Hague.
Yeah, I think Anish is trying to figure out if he can take on d4 with a bishop here, because it's much preferable strategically.
Yeah, but
Bishop b4, maybe bishop b6. Because knight c5, knight d6 I think is decent here.
or bishop c8.
Or bishop c8, yeah. Let's go bishop b6 first. But still, I guess rook... Yeah, no, hang on. This I'm less sure about. Let's...
Okay, why? Knight c5?
Yeah, yeah, knight c5, bishop c8, rook a4, but you do escape via d2, yeah?
I want to go a5, but...
If I rook a1, you might be discomfited somewhat. But bishop d2 followed by bishop g5, bishop b7, and knight d6 might be okay for black. Well, probably is okay for black because he is...
He's a pawn up.
Yeah, he's a pawn up, and his pawn structure is he's still very, very solid. The reason for all this is that if you take with the knight, you've kind of... it was very important for this knight to reach either c5 or a5 as early as possible. Here black can play knight, either d6 or c7, and start getting things under control. Yeah, once it lands on b5, I think black's life becomes somewhat easier. Get the knight to b5, play bishop c8, and claim that, yes, white has some control over the dark squares, but the structure is so solid and so inviolate. Is that a word? Probably is. Hope it is.
What's that word? I'm learning lots of stuff today. Invalid?
No.
Inviolent?
Yeah, okay, I'll abandon the... Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Yeah.
Doesn't matter, but yeah. Point
Okay.
hammered home. Knight d4 is slow, and bishop d4, bishop b4.
We can't make it
seems to
work.
hold.
We can't make it work for now, but we could continue trying. Knight c5, knight d6, I guess, or bishop c8. I want to
this
go
way,
e3 here. Yeah, it's incredibly.
Hits
Here
my
I can
poor
even if I play knight d6, I can even take on c5 next move, and then just go bishop b6, rook f8, and it's a whole pawn.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very difficult to make work. I was briefly excited about this, but
Not gonna be able to do it. And yeah, bishop e5 you just take as well. Or go bishop c8.
hang on a second. If we do it in the other line, bishop b6, you put the rook.
I
Well,
put it here, which is not the only move, obviously.
yeah, knight c5. You go bishop c8, which I think is forced, and I go something like, I don't know, rook c2 or e3, or yeah, let's say e3. But it does feel a little bit artificial because, for instance, you can move the knight somewhere and then take on c5 next move simply, like knight f6. And you know, you caught my bishop. I'm forced to give it up. But how heartbroken am I about it? I am a pawn up, and my structure is still rock solid. Rook e8. There is some compensation, but
Yeah, I don't think white is worse, but it's hard to believe.
yeah, that
better
would be
to
my
go
assessment
on
as well.
E4
Yeah,
or
e4 or b4 or something. Yeah. Yeah. So Anish is justified in thinking about this for a while because he would very much like to take with the bishop. I think from a strategical point of view, but it doesn't seem to be working quite yet.
Why did he allow this? Did he have to allow this? I'm not sure why he went knight fd4 in this position.
Yeah,
This was nice. You can go knight a5
knight
or whatever.
d6. No, I think it makes sense to
Both
try and
both.
trade off the e6 knight because if you do it without any positional concessions here, I think you're happy. But
The timing feels a little off.
yeah, the timing is not ideal. But I feel I understand this choice. But
So you could have gone knight a5 here, I guess. Just
yeah, bishop c8. Yeah, once again, it's not immediately obvious what's going on. I mean, white always has a slight pull, but it seems like Evgeny navigated the pitfalls of his position up to here quite carefully and should be able to stabilize.
Someone looked it up. Inviolate is actually a word. Who knew? You still do this trick of reading lots of books.
Yeah,
That's very
and then I know all these words because I've seen them in print and I don't know how to pronounce them or what they mean exactly.
All I do is listen to basketball podcasts, so I know how to pronounce my 100 words. I don't know. Magnus Carlsen knows how to use his pieces. He's played rook fc8, not going for this doubling rooks plan, but very strongly hinting at c6
Yeah,
one
c6,
day or another.
c6 could be a plan, and also I think
c5.
one of the reasons for knight b6 is whenever something appears on a1, he can take it and place the second one on a8 immediately,
Right.
which is useful to him, of course, in the fight for the only open file. Yeah, I think he's quite comfortable here. I think black is fine, but white is also fine, of course. I mean, white's position is...
Yeah, but the
is
trend
very solid.
is in black's favor. Maybe not the Lawrence trend, because he's probably rooting for Fabiano. But overall, I'm not sure. I wouldn't be comfortable with white. You haven't achieved really anything out of this nice looking structure, while Carlsen has lots of useful moves to make. Knight e7, c6, double
Well,
rooks.
Magnus's position is actually more compact, because you're kind of... I wouldn't say you were overstretched on the queen side, but the b4 and c4 pawns, they might actually become targets later on. It's not inconceivable for those pawns eventually to become a little bit of an issue for white. So, yeah, I mean, on the other hand, Magnus really has no weaknesses. His structure is you know, very, very natural. And yeah.
There's some question in the chat. Why doesn't black play for f5? But this is a different kind of King's Indian. First of all, both these bishops have been exchanged, which makes f5 a lot less attractive, because you need the light square bishop for this long-term checkmate plan, and you need a dark square bishop to actually safeguard your king after f5, ef, gf structure. The king could feel a little alone with his...
Yeah.
front
No, I
on
think
G7
yeah, play will be concentrated on the queen side in this game for a while, and you get the feeling that neither side wants to commit to anything right away here. There will be some maneuvering here, some jostling for position, so to speak. Black still has some improving moves he can make. Knight either to h5 or to d7. King g7 is always, you know, a nice little move to make. But yes, until one of them decides to change the structure in some way, there won't be, you know, much happening here. The one open file doesn't really create enough dynamic play until either white goes, you know, full bore for the c4 c5 break, or until black decides to either go f5 or c6.
Yeah, f5 not gonna happen anytime soon, but it's always a structural option, even later in some endgame, to create some more weaknesses or some more space. f5 could very much happen, but it's not gonna be played in the next 10 moves.
And Jimmy Anderson has taken a wicket. Good.
That's very uninteresting. Bishop to e8 in the Caruana game. What's going on here? Where did we leave it off? Rook f6, as expected, had to be played, not to get checkmated. Rook d7, king h6.
He didn't play c4 here, which I thought was kind of important, cutting off this bishop on e2. But what he did is also very natural, centralizing the king with tempo. And yeah, f4 for black doesn't really do much, so Fabiano attacked the bishop on d5 and went bishop e8. I think he wants to go to b5 next move, because if you allow king e3, king d4, I think you're in a great deal of trouble here.
Yeah.
I actually think this is quite nice for white in general. Even here, let's say I go king d4 once again. King e5. Bishop takes c4.
Sure, where?
And put it somewhere.
Yeah.
Probably b6 actually, yeah. But bishop takes c4 anyway. You might be able to hold this, but you're not really enjoying yourself very much with the king on h6 and the, I mean, more or less every single, well, that's probably an overstatement. I want to say every single bishop ending lost, but with only three pawns left on the board, that's probably not entirely correct. But bishop endings will be very risky. Let's put it like this. So yeah, if we proceed under the assumption of this being David's preparation, I'm very, very impressed. Because the machine screams that black is better once this exchange is sacrificed.
I'd be very surprised. You could be right, but if he arrived here in preparation, because as someone who spent way too much time on this line, I believe you quit somewhere around here and think, okay, I'm slightly better. This is not the problem. Like, believe me, there's much bigger problems
I
lurking
that,
here
yeah.
after every move. So very impressive if you found a total sideline where you're slightly better anyway. came up with a very hidden exchange sacrifice there.
Yeah, that would be very, very impressive. But you know, the timings plus his general approach plus the fact that really bishop g4 is not something you blunder when you are as good as all of these guys are, leads me to believe that he very possibly may have looked at this previously. And I'm very, very impressed because it's an idea which you need to analyze sort of by hand. The machine dislikes it quite vehemently to begin with.
And Navarra is always very outspoken, very open about his ideas and his preparation and how far it lasted. I'm sure we're gonna find out.
Yeah, if they you know, go the obvious route of interviewing him after the game, he gives fantastic press conferences. I really, really like the guy. I played for the same club with him for a while. He's a lovely, lovely person. One of the nicest guys in chess, and he is really, really interesting to talk to after games because he is a very interesting player. Sees a lot during games, and also is very frank about everything. So, if asked, he will tell us. Well, not us, but whoever is asking the question whether this is home prep or not.
It's not Mickey Adams' home prep, but f takes g4 has been played one move later after giving this check, moving the bishop out of the way. So things are heating up a little bit. First question, why can't I try to grab an exchange?
King g6.
Gimme.
Bishop f5.
Checkmate me? Not yet. So
not really, but I think I can take on b2. Maybe. Oh, sorry, c2, yeah.
That's okay.
You kind of need to play either rook b2 or bishop b2 here, I think, because otherwise,
Yeah,
if you allow
b2, you just take all my stuff.
But then it's a draw. If I need to take a knight on a8, it will be a draw. So yeah. The big question is, can I play rook e2 here?
Here.
Yeah.
Check.
Yeah, I missed that. King g5 anyway. How bad is this? Because if I pick up the bishop on b2, I will be much better.
Gotcha.
And if I get g3, bishop e4, I probably will give mate. Although not entirely sure about that. But g takes h3 is a threat, I think, more than g3 if this pawn reaches h3.
Yeah, I want to play h4 check, but I'm very worried about getting checkmated after just king takes.
Yeah, king takes.
And, no, bishop somewhere then. Oof. Bad things might happen to me.
Yeah, black risks nothing at all here and might be better. So, very curious. Also, in the position they have on the board now, you can play knight e2 check, bishop f6, and now either bishop g5 or bishop b2, I haven't decided. There's also knight g3, but it's a bit vague, it allows king g6. So let's go bishop g5, rook e2 probably, rook f6, king g7 probably, rook... No, but there's bishop e6 next move. I wanted to go rook bf1 and start checking, but black's checks are somewhat more important here after bishop e6. Yeah, I probably need to play c4, but then I'm in trouble. Simply g takes h3, 2 pawns down. Yeah, very interesting and a very well principled decision by Pavel there. Not shirking the calculations which are required if you want to play a move like this. There's also all kinds of intermediary moves. Like I'm curious if c3 might make sense here, but bishop b6 maybe.
It's a weird square.
I don't know. I mean, or g7. One of those two, I think. But I've protected. Yeah, mainly I protected c7, and I placed my bishop on a square where it cannot be taken for free. Yeah, very interesting.
Looks like black is, if there's no obvious move, black is in charge. More or less.
Yeah, I think so. I'm trying to come up. There's also bishop b2 here, followed by not rook takes b2, but knight d4, knight d5, and knight c7. But I don't believe it will work.
Wow.
Check. King g6 still, I think.
I'd love to go bishop f6, but knight f6.
Yeah, knight f6, and this I should draw, I think, with one. King g6, knight c7, and something like rook e2, I suspect, or bishop f5, or I don't know, rook e2. Yeah, it's a very confusing position. Rook b2, rook b8 is probably okay for black. Although Yeah,
Nice.
a collection of very awkward pieces. Yeah, the rook on b2 is horrible, the knight on c7 is horrible, but
White could go this and
yeah,
increase the collection would be nice, but no. Takes or gh, and
followed by bishop g4.
Black has more stuff going on.
Rook b1, bishop g4, I think is a line we should show. It's kind of critical, and this allows mate in 3 with h1 rook.
I'm not going to show it because sometimes the system collapses when you queen a pawn.
Okay.
Yeah, Ulyanov, I think he out-prepared Mickey to some extent, and he's been calculating. Still, there might be a way for White to hold, but it looks like he's the one.
Yeah,
Has to do the equalizing.
I wasn't able to find it after 5 minutes of staring at this position. So let's see what Mickey comes up with. I'm still somewhat confused by what White should do here. And yeah, how if I went for bishop d4? I'm slightly surprised by this. I considered this move, but it seemed very slow. What happens if I go queen c7?
That's the question.
Because if you play e5 here, yeah, no, this bishop b7 simply. I think Black is suddenly doing extremely well.
Here.
G. It's kind of the same thing. 95, bishop b7, bishop f3 maybe. Maybe here you play bishop f3. And there's a lot of stuff hanging for Black.
This could end ugly.
Yeah, this could be a problem. Okay, let's start with bishop b7 then. I don't know why I went queen c7. We need to take control of this diagonal as soon as possible. There is knight to, well, any square, e1, d2, e5. No, e5 is not that critical, but yeah. The point being that we cannot return to e5 because bishop takes e5 and we can't recapture with the d-pawn. But there's all kinds of intermediate moves here. We can go b4, we can go, I mean, knight h6 is ugly, but it's possible as a move. There's also e6, e5 if things get very, very tight for Black.
Well, this looks like worst case scenario, because here...
Queen b6, followed by b4. Yeah, I'm not liking this, yeah.
This looks ugly.
This looks very, very... Yeah, this is...
What about this?
Yeah, b4, I think I need to go knight a4 here, but maybe bishop b4 is possible now.
I thought you want to start
or queen a5. Queen a5, b3, and the queen might be in danger later on, but maybe not. Bishop takes e4, bishop f3, I don't know, or f3. Now f3 we will return.
Just bishop.
Yeah, bishop f3, but maybe d6, d5 simply, or something. An incredibly messy position. There are many moves. We are rambling here a little bit because that's what you're witnessing is a sort of a vocalized approach to a very, very difficult position where there's a lot of complications which need to be assessed somehow. You're going through the options at a very high speed, trying to rule out the ones which are losing on the spot, and the ones they don't, you stick around for longer. But queen c7 and bishop b7 are only two of the options available to Black. I think there should be more. Let's point out why e6, e5 is not a move. Yeah.
Why isn't it?
It actually is a move. But bishop
e5.
Yeah, bishop e5 is the problem. Yeah, knight e5, knight e5. Can I play b4 here? Probably knight c6 will win, I guess. Yeah, knight c6 followed by knight g5 is probably very, very strong. Yeah, this is bad for Black, obviously.
Very bad things will happen. Yeah, this whole position is probably just to lose the king in the center. Not being bothered yet, but any moment.
No, from a, as a Sicilian player of sort of long standing, bishop b7 is a move you want to make here, in the position they have on the board. No, not here. Here it doesn't really, it's too late for anything, I think, but here. But you will have to calculate all these complications precisely because...
Well, frankly, one looked interesting.
Yeah, but... seriously, how bad is it? If after knight e1 I kind of display a shocking lack of understanding and just go knight h6?
Well, you understand that a knight is worth 3 pawns and you don't want to hang it. If bishop f3 you want to
No, I will play
just
I will
chase
play
me away.
g4 because I don't want to allow e5 with my pieces as discoordinated as they are right now. Yeah, I'm not like I really dislike this knight, but on the other hand, white is not really threatening anything at the moment. And if allowed, I will play knight f5 next move and will feel slightly better about my life. So you need to actually do something about this.
Trying, but I can't see any tricks. Knight b5, a, b, bishop b5, knight d7.
Knight d7, yeah.
Black's fine.
Black's position is, I mean, structurally, it's still very healthy. Yes, there are some pieces which are horribly misplaced, but there are no strategic issues. There's only the immediate tactical ones. Yeah, even this doesn't really seem all that horrible. And if it doesn't lose, which it doesn't seem to do, at least not to our current thinking, you really want to go bishop b7 because it safeguards you against the worst things that can happen in this position. Because if something blows up along the long diagonal, your position is dead.
I've never understood these positions with either color, but neither has Luke, so I'm still thinking Hu Yifan is a big favorite here, even though I don't see any tricks. But maybe a knight e1, knight h6, and then
Yeah, so
some.
it's a curious position. I'm also very interested in her not playing e5.
Yeah, that one I'm also confused about.
I'm not quite sure why she chose not to do that, because e5 looked incredibly attractive here, and yeah, we're trying to see what now that it is gone and we can safely check. Apparently e5 is met by takes, and b4 as we expected, but after knight
This
d4,
position, knight d4.
yeah, now d5.
Yeah, d5.
It's a huge mess, which is kind of difficult to assess correctly, and bishop b7 has been played by Luke, so interesting to see what Hu Yifan's plan is here.
Yeah, and the computer which we just switched on thinks black is fine here. If
That was my impression, to be honest.
knight e1, knight h6, there's nothing direct, and he's a pawn up after all.
Yeah, it was my impression that this is now suddenly quite okay for black, whereas after e5, black could potentially still be fine with very precise play, but every single mistake there was fatal. You had this impression that one wrong move and the game is completely over. Whereas here, once the bishop lands on b7, black gets much bigger leeway.
Yeah, that was a strange decision, and seems like Luke is okay. Alright, computer off with a very heavy heart. Anish Giri, with a very heavy heart, decided to recapture on d4 with a knight. Probably the correct decision, because couldn't make it work.
And then a period of where both sides are improving their position slowly, and white still has more space, and black doesn't really want to play knight b5 when white can snap this knight off, and taking with the a pawn will give white the control over the a file, and taking with c is unthinkable. So he can't really improve his position immediately here. I mean, maybe knight f5 is a consideration, but then maybe knight b3. Because I think if the knights come off, black's life becomes much simpler.
No, it's gonna continue for a long time. Tomaszewski still has to defend. Maybe you can even think about this.
Takes.
Maybe.
Rook a7, just play bishop c8 and ask.
Yeah, I'm not sure how happy I am, but at least I got rid of the knights.
Yeah, followed by bishop d6, bishop somewhere. Yeah, I don't know. This is possible, but it's very passive, and I don't think black absolutely needs to do it. And if he doesn't need to do it, he probably won't. You can also maybe make an argument for g6, bishop g7 in a current position.
Yeah,
or maybe. Although black doesn't really want to trade off the dark square bishops. So
no.
Okay, so Karek and Carlsen. There have been some developments.
Not a lot.
Well, I mean, one pair of rooks came off, and Magnus did play c6 as we expected.
Queen e8, deep move.
Well, he wants to go knight a4 and
This-
assume control over the a file. I think he's slowly outplaying his opponent a little bit,
what I'm saying,
as he generally tends to aim to do, at least in every game.
King h2, and now
I think
what does he want?
CD5, ED5 I think will be the immediate response, because it finally gives white something to play with the E4 pawn square for his knights. And
I don't think you want that. I think you want to prepare it so you force white to go CD.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
which
I
is
was
why
thinking about Queen C8.
he did play Queen C8. Yes,
Oh,
so.
he's a pretty decent chess player.
Yeah, Queen C8, and yeah, as we mentioned, only white's position has potential targets, and white really has not very much to play against. The pawn on d6 will never be under any kind of serious pressure in this game, and yeah, still I think equilibrium is very near at hand, and it shouldn't be a big problem for white here. But
also, after all the Carlsen praising, it should be said that Karjakin is arguably the best defender in the world in positions that are dangerous for him strategically. He doesn't shy away from making ugly moves to keep his material together, and he's incredibly hard to defeat.
I'm not sure.
Which ugly move do we make here? Queen b3?
If I take on c6, you take with the queen, I assume, yeah?
Yes.
And I go, I don't know, queen b3, followed by rook d3. How bad can it be?
Don't be too bad. Here you go, rook d3.
I actually lost a pawn there. It could be quite unpleasant if you start losing pawns immediately. Yeah, that's inadvisable. Maybe start with queen b3.
Yep, that looks like a move. We shall see.
Yeah, still, maneuvering phase is nowhere near over in this game. There's still going to be some slow improvement before either of them commits to anything, I have a feeling.
Yeah, and to my surprise, Mr. Tomaszewski has implemented your plan of g6, bishop g7. To my surprise, because yeah, I thought after knight b3
you will probably need, you kind of need to go back. Yeah, this is why I thought this wasn't particularly good for black, because you really don't want to take on c3. I mean, taking on c3 is unthinkable because it improves white structure a great deal. But
maybe wants to do something like this. No, knight b5
and claim that there is really no plan. I will play e3, g5, h4. I mean, white can improve forever. But yeah, maybe there is not that much going on here.
Well,
and did play knight e1, and now apparently, according to Machine, at not a particularly great depth. Both b4 and knight h6 are very decent.
Yeah, it's not that many other options. e5 we disliked, and we gotta do something about it. But
yeah,
Lukey boy back in the game, ahead on time, or well, he was never out of the game, but it felt very dangerous after e5 instead of bishop d4.
Let's revisit the Soma Midarov game. We haven't been there in a while. I'm starting to like this for white, to be honest. Well,
did you always like it for white?
More than I did previously, because there are now actual targets to play against. Although if the queen lands on c5, I will feel much safer as black. Is c5 a move here? d5? No, I think no. This is knight g4. This is horrible, I think. But c5, d5 is the plan, I suspect. Knight g4, h5. Hang on a second. Knight h4, king h7, I guess I need to play, yeah? Takes, queen d2, but probably is a draw. No, I can't take on d5 next move, which is important. And I can even play h5 here. Suddenly black is better. Yeah, it's easy to misplay, but c5 is an interesting tactical idea you need to consider. Doesn't seem to work though. Because initially I wanted to double on the d file, but then queen a7, queen c5 stabilizes quite well for black, I think.
I just wanted this, but then king h7.
King h7, yeah, I don't think you're achieving very much.
It's a pity.
Because Wesley did something interesting. He found a way to take on a5 in such a fashion that black was forced to recapture with a pawn, despite having a queen on a8. Which now black has to watch out for this a5 pawn, but on the other hand, a4 and c4 are also potential targets for black in any kind of an endgame. Queen a7.
Yeah, I won't manage to Bring my knight to where it belongs. Even if I do after knight f8, it's not exactly checkmate.
No.
So yeah, knight g4 might be lacking sophistication. Still white is better, right? If he plays any move. King h1. Why am I not better?
Queen a7. You are slightly better, yes. He played knight c2. I'm slightly confused about that.
Very deep.
Yeah, very, very deep, yeah. Because, but I think he maybe wants to be able to meet queen c5 with knight b3 eventually. Because he feels the queen is very much aimed at the c5 square, and he wants to play knight d4 and then have knight b3 at his disposal. So he realized he's not really giving mate on the king side, and he switched to other plans. Interesting choice, and very decent probably.
And Luke, true to his style, has not played the safe retreat, but the aggressive move b5 to b4.
Yeah, you don't really expect him to go back when there are moves forward. He generally is the move only forward kind of chess player.
Van Willis never go back. It's a famous saying in Dutch chess circles. That was a lie.
No, I want to go knight a4. I think if I have to do this, black is fine. Although bishop takes c3, what do you take with?
I don't know, bishop e4, bishop f3 scares me a little bit. So
which is why maybe knight. Yeah, I was going to go bishop f3 anyway, but I think you can take on c3 there, and this is not particularly worrying for black. Bishop b7. Although, hang on a second, we will take on a8 next move.
Maybe.
Knight g1, bishop a8, knight b2. But it's speculative, and white will be a piece up, so yeah.
Yeah, and the king has to go here, so it's
that wasn't worrying me a great deal, but the fact that I will be a piece down does worry me.
Okay.
So bishop g4, bc, bishop takes c3. What are we missing?
Well, worst case scenario, black can take on g4. I'm not sure
But
there's any problems, but
then white is perfectly fine. Knight comes to d3, we play f3, supporting the e4 pawn, and material is equal. The king is still on e8. Never really going to leave e8 either. So we can play rook h7, start to harry it from all sides. Now it should be some kind of a tactical solution here. Bishop e4, bishop f3, maybe take on f3.
What I was worried about is if knight d5,
rook
d5
yeah, you definitely
feels
knight d3
incredibly awkward. Yeah, I don't know.
Knight g2 even. Knight d3, knight b4. Yeah, knight d3, knight b4. This suddenly looks fantastic for white. Great compensation for the exchange.
Not gonna be able to do it, and yeah, d5. I also
just take on f6, take on e4 twice. I think might lose on the spot.
Yeah.
Interesting, because you must have some plan against this before playing b4, because oh dear, I'm falling into all of your traps there. I think Luke just disliked knight h6 on sight more than.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, more than for any kind of rational reason. He just didn't like misplacing his piece in such a horrible way. But it was a decent move, I think, knight h6. What's the time situation there?
No, they both have like. Who you find has 20, Luke has 30 minutes, so no looming time trouble yet.
Well, it's for 20
we're
moves.
We're gonna get there.
Yep. It's actually for more than 20 moves. It's for 24 moves. So it's going to be a reasonably short time trouble for both of them, you feel.
Gonna be fun. Bishop takes g4 is
Bishop
on the board.
g4 has been played, so in a moment we will see what I mean. He will take on c3, but after bishop takes c3, I'm very curious as to his next move, because he must have had something in mind when he went b4 so quickly. Yeah, what's going on in this endgame?
You tell me. What is better? How much? I do not know.
Yeah, you start by saying white is better because white is better.
Yes.
But whether this will be enough for David to...
I can also say white should probably centralize the king.
Has already been
king
done.
Should be in the center.
Yeah, king e7. Now you go rook g8 and you ask a question. And it's actually an uncomfortable question to answer, because king f6 might actually lose, I think. Rook f8 check. Where do you put it? I think you're kind of dead there. Almost. I think king g5 is the only move.
No,
to have rook h6 in reply here. Yeah, this is a dead loss position. You can resign. But yeah, king g5 instead. But still, I mean, it feels horribly wrong. Yeah, king e5 followed by rook f7.
Why not this first?
Yeah, also 6
okay.
Yeah, because of this, yeah. But king e5, and if rook h6, rook f7 wins on the spot, I think. So you have to play rook g6, continue making incredibly ugly moves. And bishop f3 now, yeah.
This looks
Totally misplayed.
very bad.
He played rook g8, rook g6, not falling for any of that, as, you know, would be unlikely.
Well, it's still a pretty disgusting
Yeah, but
position,
after
even
king
if I just play this.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he's doing. He has an hour left, so if he's doing this at this speed, he feels this is holdable.
I don't know, maybe he feels it's horrible and he just doesn't want to look at it for too long.
Bishop b6,
Here,
rook b8.
just, yeah, any rook move.
Rook b8, all the rook endings will be, well,
This
I
is
want to say
pretty bad.
lost, yeah. I want to say lost. Yeah, seems like we were getting, you know, remember the speech we gave about Magnus being very, very unhappy with Navarra blundering in exchange?
Yeah. We might have been wrong. Now he's happy with Fabiano blundering it back.
Yeah.
No, as you said, it might have been a very deep idea by Navarra, and I'm still very surprised. Even though I advocate this line for white, I would expect if Caruana goes here that he would have worked it out, but might have been a blank spot in his preparation a little bit, because he's been getting in trouble quite early, starting with rook b8 and after f4, e5. Navarra went for this fancy solution, which might not have been necessary, might have been home preparation, might have been inspiration over the board, we don't know, but he's managed to pose problems. Here we initially missed that this is very, very
Yeah,
awkward.
bishop d3 is probably the only move that wins, but it wins sort of instantly and very, very convincingly. Black is pretty much dead here, because the e7 pawn survives in every variation.
Yeah.
And this is mate in two, yeah. So, Adams Elianov. Mickey finally settled on bishop b2. I'm not sure if his idea is to take on b2 or go for this 95, 97 line. I have a feeling he probably will recapture on b2 and hope that black has nothing better than something like king g8, after which he should be able to survive by, I don't know, taking on g4 and going c4, rook g2. Still not very nice. And there's apparently an even stronger move on the previous move. After rook takes b2, yeah, in this position, after rook takes b2, apparently there's rook e3.
Well, we need quite some nerve to keep allowing all these covered checks.
Yeah.
Rook
Rook e3, yeah, with the idea of rook f3 is apparently very strong. I was clicking through windows on my laptop and this came up. So, yeah, it seems like, yeah, and the position after rook takes b2 is on the board. So if Pavel plays correctly here, rook e3 is not the only move in the position, which is quite decent. Apparently rook h8 is also very good. So
that's a good move.
yeah, rook h8
like
is
this
also rook h8 is also much more natural than rook e3. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's necessarily lost, but it's clear that it's black who is going to be playing for a win here.
Absolument. It's also maybe less clear now, but I still think Wesley So is the one playing for a win. However, Maudiarov managed to put his knight on a nice square, get everything under control for now. d5 one day could be an idea, but at the moment
Not at the moment, yeah. No, white can still improve his position. I would probably play something like h3, king h2 here to...
Can black improve as well? And c6 sang, so maybe this rook. I'm not sure how much we
Yeah, maybe we don't have as much time as I thought. Yeah, this is a good point. I don't really want to allow the rook to land on b4. What about rook gb1?
I like it. Prophylactic thinking. Can only play one at a time.
Rook b7 might be possible now.
Yep.
Because if we take and take on a5, there's queen b2, there's also rook a8. Yeah. Well, white is playing with very little margins here, obviously. It's a position in which you need to be very, very precise, or black will escape somehow.
What's there?
And there's now, once again, a lot of screaming in chat about this stream being dead. I don't know if that's true or not.
Video stopped. I'm happy restarting it. Let's see.